looks like he's hit pretty bad.
Damn that Deke Thornton to hell.
What would you do in his place? He gave his word.
Gave his word to a railroad. It's his word! That ain't what counts! It's who you give it to!
I'm Ernest Borgnine. Years ago, I discovered something exciting to do off the screen. I collect stamps. And U.S. commemoratives are a great way to get started. They're fun, they're history, they're America. I know that someday my kids will enjoy stamps as much as I do.
Start your collection with the talking picture stamp at your post office now.
We are on a boat.
We are on a boat. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
We're out of the gate. We're coming out 2017 with a bang. Over Blake's mom's house this week.
Yeah.
You know, on the boat.
Sleeping down in the basement.
Down in the basement. It's fun. I had to come over here. It's cold outside.
It is chilly. It's getting chilly up here in the Northeast.
Yeah. Welcome to a 2017 edition.
Our first 2017 edition of
Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers.
You must excuse me. I'm a little sick. I got sick traveling, as we always are near death when you travel.
It's almost tradition for one of us to be sick during a John Carpenter.
Oh, that's true because you were sick during the thing, and then I might have been sick during when we did the various Halloweens. Yeah, I have a cough though. I think you get sick. There's a 50% chance you get sick if you're on a plane. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
I got really lucky. I did a lot of traveling in 2016, and I got really lucky that I don't think I didn't get all that sick.
That's great.
I was expecting to. I'll get sick just from going on the subway.
Oh, yeah. That's how I am. I'm usually really good, but so usually all bets are off, and then it was this year I got sick, you know. Good holiday season? You have fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was okay.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
Came and went, you know. It was nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
Good Life Day.
Yeah, Life Day was good. Then, in 2016 with so many people passing, it seemed like we had like an obituary page there for a little while.
I know. It was like at the end, they're all trying to get it under the wire.
I know, it was terrible. Just so many people passing away, and then I completely forgot. We dropped the ball with what's her face, Carrie Fisher's mom. You know, we didn't make that reference in our Star Wars cast about her singing. That's why she's singing, because of Debbie Reynolds, you know. Was a singer back in her day. Wow. So sad. So many people passing away. But I fear that we're going to hit that now, because they're getting to that age where you're going to start having them going, like not in threes, but like in like sixes or nines.
Yikes.
You know, I mean, you look at it like Eastwood's in his mid-80s, you know, Chino De Niro or 70, you know, pushing 70, you know, you think about all these people who are old, you know, older than us. It's like that they're getting, you know.
True.
And then Nicholson's, I think, in his late 70s. So it's like, and then they're a hack now. It's like, well, they're freaking in their 80s. They're
give them a break.
Yeah, Jesus. They're trying. You know, they got a whole biography of work that they just they're resting their laurels on. But yeah, it was good. I had a good Christmas too. I was in England. I will say, you and I talked about this some years ago, but I like Christmas time. It's interesting that over here, you know, MTV has kind of moved away from the music video, and they went to like reality TV.
Yeah.
In England, they still have a bunch of music channels. MTV will have 4 or 5 channels, and I like the idea they play marathons of Christmas videos. So it's like a tradition where you just put the TV on like 2 or 3 days before Christmas, and you just have a marathon of like all these Christmas music videos you'd completely forgotten. And I thought that would catch on here if they did that, but you know, they need to get back into the music business.
Yeah, I don't know. On our cable, they have like an MTV Classics, which was formerly VH1 Classics.
They play music videos?
I'm trying to I wasn't here for it, so I didn't look, but
I mean, just in general, they play videos?
No, well, they do like blocks of videos. It's a lot of they'll play some of the old unplugged.
Yeah, that's cool.
Stuff like that.
It's
some
funny.
of it's just like the MTV non-music programming that they started in the 90s. Like
Oh,
some
yeah.
of the cartoons and stuff that they used to
Like
do.
Liquid TV and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even Weird Red and Stimpy was on MTV for a minute. Like after,
Yeah.
like, I guess because it's owned by Viacom, which is also Nickelodeon.
Viacom.
It's so odd that just the I don't know, music video. You think that they went to reality show now, but then the reality show doesn't really date well. Like you wouldn't really go back and watch if you were into whatever. You know what I mean? Like go back and watch like The Real World. It's like,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess you'd watch it for the novelty, but it's not like, you know, if you're gonna go binge watching like whatever your old favorite Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Let's
go back and
binge
watch
Survivor season 2.
Yeah, but I guess people do that, which is weird. People own, you know, whoever. Some people are into Survivor or The Bachelor or The Apprentice.
I know for a while there, they used to sell them on DVDs, all those reality shows.
Yeah, they
So
come out and
somebody
they'd be
was
like,
buying them.
yeah, and so it's like once it becomes like, you know, are people gonna like get the Jersey Shore or growing up with the Gaudis and like, you know, watch, you know what I mean, like all that, because it's all so dated now. You don't even know who those people are anymore. You're gonna watch stuff from like the 2004 or 5, the Osbournes. That was a great show. We used to watch the Osbournes. So it's just it's so all those like MTV 1, 2, 3, 4s, they're just gonna have like just old. You know, I'd rather watch like Remote Control or their old 80s programming. You know,
What was the one?
Headbangers Ball? Like play some, you know.
What was the one with? It was like the dating show. With,
Singled Out.
Singled Out with
Jenny
Chris
McCarthy
Hardwick
and Chris McCarthy.
Yeah.
Then she left, and then it was what's her face for a minute.
Carmen Electra.
Yeah,
right?
Carmen Electra came replaced, but that was the thing. Her and Jenny McCarthy, like that with Chris Hardwick, and then he went and he left and he did that dating show for a minute. He was doing like, remember that it was in the mid 2000s. It was like, I forget the name of the date. It was a dating show, but it was like a blind. Maybe it was called Blind Date. And they go on a blind date. It was actually pretty funny because they do pop up.
Yeah. I don't think that was Chris Hardwick though.
He did one of those because I used to watch.
Because there was some other host. Maybe they replaced.
So
hosts
maybe
at some point.
he did one that there was like a cruise ship one or something, but he did one of them, and I was like, oh, it's the dude from Singled Out because it was before the Nerdist, so it was like 2005.
I remember Blind Date. We used to watch Blind Date.
Was it
They
Blind
had,
Date?
the
Yeah.
pop up things and like what they were thinking.
Yeah, and those
Stupid
things are
jokes.
hilarious, and like, you know, about to get awkward in 3, 2, 1, you know, and it's just so.
I remember there was one episode where some guy went on a blind date, and and the blind date was with Tiffany.
Oh, yeah, the Tiffany.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. And that's back when she was still looking really good. And I was like, that guy got lucky.
And he's like, he doesn't know her. He's like, who are you? Tiff, do you have a last name? That's funny. But we're not talking about any of that today.
No.
Yeah, not at all.
But, you know, there is, I think that the movie we're talking about visually inspired. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the song, but there was like a Duran Duran video that was kind of inspired by Escape from New York.
Oh, of course.
And so, you know, it's a little bit of a weird segue.
Yeah, we're segueing. It introduced, I mean, like that 80s. I have a huge affinity for that 80s future noir, which you see in the 80s.
Hence the name.
Excuse me. Yeah, and it's you have a lot of fun there. You know, like with the, you know, it's like the 40s or 30s idea of the future of like, you know, by 2001 they're going to be flying in cars and, you know, robots in a house, and they all look like Robbie the Robot. Like, should I make your tea, sir? You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's basically, Carpenter talks about it. There's, when you do like a futuristic sci-fi movie, you can really only go two ways. You go like utopia and everything's like great, the way we think it's
a time machine in the future,
the way we all want it to be. And then there's the dystopian, which is kind of all that post-apocalyptic stuff, which I guess kind of came into fashion because of the success of Mad Max, right?
Yeah, Mad Max.
At that time, that was like, what, 78, 79?
Yeah, I would think that around that time you had... I wonder... That'd be a good research project to see what was actually the kickoff of that, you know, because that... I mean, they say we've been perplexed by this, but, you know, what's-his-face talks about the Warriors were supposed to be post-apocalyptic, which I've never had any frame of reference on until they came out with that special edition.
Yeah, and he said it. Walter Hill was like, oh, yeah, it's the future. It's in the future.
Really? I mean, I don't think he needs to excuse or explain anything, because those guys were really scary back in the day.
No, but we had this discussion. I don't know if we may have talked about it on the Warrior cast, which we did a epic... podcast
summer podcast on the Warriors a couple years ago.
And I don't remember if we talked specifically about it, but we've had this discussion at the very least since, that this is the New York and the Warriors is like in the same world as Escape from New York, but it's like what New York was like just before the World War III happened and it got shut down and became a penitentiary.
Yeah, I'm Dion Baia. You're Jay Blake.
Jay Blake.
We're here to talk about John Carpenter's Escape from New York from 1981.
John Carpenter, the patron saint of
Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers. We're kicking in 2017.
The person most represented.
Yeah.
Except for, as you said in one podcast,
there might last week's Santa Claus. It was Burgess Meredith is a close second. Wilford Brimley.
But you also said that there might be some like key grip or something that we don't know about. He's
in every single movie.
We've never mentioned him.
He's a huge. He's like Joe Spinelli. He's just signing in every day, and he's on every movie.
We've done The Thing.
Big
Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China. That's 2. We did Halloween 2 we was a part
Halloween's
of.
2 and 3, which he produced.
Yeah. We did In the Mouth of Madness.
We did In the Mouth of Madness.
What is that? That's like a baker's half dozen there. And then did we do something else? I feel like we did something else.
There's got to be at least one more in there.
Because we talked about doing all his stuff. There's tons of movies that we thought we've done because we've talked about doing it.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why we're doing them right now, I think one, not when the movie was made, but it takes place in 1997, so we have a little bit of an anniversary there.
Which is crazy because that's like in a lot of stuff was going down in 1997 because that's when Terminator in 91 or 92 says like on August 29th, 1997 that the bombs go off.
Yeah.
So
it's all intertwined.
Yeah, and you and I graduated high school in 97, so like Jesus, shit's not going to get any better after that.
So I think that was one of the reasons why we're like, 1997, that's a little bit of an anniversary in that weird kind of way. And then Carpenter's just had this huge resurgence in 2016.
You interviewed him for your book.
I interviewed him for my book. Shortly after that,
which we like to say, you put the idea in his head about...
He released an album
Yeah.
called Lost Themes, and then the following year he released an album called Lost Themes 2. And I don't know if he's still touring, but he toured all through the summer into the fall.
Son of a bitch. I missed that. You saw him 3 times.
I saw him 3 times, yeah.
Yeah.
And
you're just repeating everything I say. Nice night for a wash. Nice night for a walk. Laundry tomorrow. Nothing clean, right? Nothing clean, right?
So I mean, in a weird way, Carpenter's arguably kind of bigger now than he ever was.
And it's weird because you think about... For me, I feel like he's kind of lost his gravitas as like a filmmaker because he hasn't. I guess it doesn't matter if you've had a hit, but it seems like certainly in the 80s and 90s they were giving him like A-list projects, and then when you kind of hit maybe 2001, 2, after Vampires or Ghost of Mars, he hasn't chosen to really do anything, and the stuff he's done hasn't been, in my personal opinion, up to like as good as his older stuff, which is not a. You can only for a certain amount of time. It's like with anybody, kind of pitters out.
He had a lot of success with Halloween and Escape from New York.
Well, that's another thing too. In the later years, we should bring up that he's also been making a lot of money in residuals because you had reboots of Halloween with Rob Zombie. You had the reboot of The Thing, first in video game form, and then in that remake in 2000.
Although I don't know if he gets a piece of any of that, because that was a Universal movie, and he didn't write the script.
Oh, that's true.
He was a gun for hire for that.
I thought he would have.
They remade The Fog.
Yeah.
They remade
that's true.
Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
The Halloweens, like you said. So, I mean... Yeah, certainly made money that way. Of course, his music has been reissued many times throughout the 2000s on extended CDs editions. Now, in a lot of LPs, vinyl LPs, getting re-released of his music.
They did limited run comic books of Big Trouble in Little China and even Escape from New York.
And right now, there's Jack Burton and Snake Plissken comic.
Oh, gee, that's awesome.
But even before the more recent Escape from New York comic, which was the last 2 years or so, there was, even before that, there was a Snake Plissken comic.
Yeah, there was because I have an MGM edition of this movie that came out in 2000 or 2001, and it's like a 2-disc set, and it comes with like a small comic size in there of it. And I don't think it's the whole thing. It's like issue 1.
I have the first issue of that. It was like the Snake Plissken Chronicles or something like that.
Yeah.
I have the first issue of that autographed by the artist and the writer. So, obviously I think he gets he must get a cut of that. He owns those. I mean, he created those characters. But then in recent years, he and his wife Sandy King, who's also his producer for his movies, they've been doing a lot of comic books. They've got like John Carpenter's Asylum.
Okay.
And they have a couple of comic book series that he's actually like involved with, like actively involved with, instead of just based on properties that he created. So I mean, he keeps busy,
and he's still been putting movies out. He did The Ward, and then he did the short that I like, that Cigarette Burns from the Masters of Horror.
He did 2 episodes of Masters of Horror
with the other guy now who people know, Norman Reedus from Walking Dead, who's in that episode of
and in 2005 or so, there was talk about doing an Escape from New York, a Snake Plissken animated movie.
Yeah,
and I remember when they announced that
trailer.
It was exciting because it was like, oh, that'd be really neat, and Russell was going to do the voice.
I mean, how cool would that have been? That would have been so. I mean, they could still technically do it. I mean, they can, whatever. Nowadays it seems like it'd be a little more easier, maybe even than 10 years ago. I mean, and then they went. There was been talks since at least 2007 or 8 that they were going to reboot the movie with Gerard Butler.
There's been a lot of talks.
Tons of people.
Even like last year, they're still making announcements.
Like something like Emily Blunt maybe even being Snake Plissken. Like they're going to like flip the script and have it be like a female, or then not have it be a reboot, it'd be a prequel, or how we
Gerard Butler. They're talking Jeremy Renner for a while.
In 2010ish.
Right now, I think they're active. They are like finally, I think, working on a script for it. And they're talking about kind of doing with it like what they did with the Planet of the Apes movies, which is kind of reboot it from a different point and maybe have Plissken at a different point before New York happened.
It'd be interesting because I remember watching this I don't know, a while ago with my wife, and she said to me, I would love to see what led him from being, because it's like the Rambo story. It's like he's a soldier for the, a patriotic soldier for your country, and then you turn for whatever reason, and then you end up being, you're a soldier of fortune, or you end up being a criminal or an outlaw or a badass. So it'd be interesting to see if they do a prequel, what led him to be so disenchanted with the world or with his country. Yeah. But you could kind of see why, because to me, like you're saying, this lives in the world of the Warriors. For me, this completely also lives in the world like RoboCop. Where you could see like old Detroit, that how cynical that world is and how like everybody in that world is morally corrupt. It's just like, well, that's happening in middle America and out east, New York's a prison now, There
was also, at some point, there was a video game being made.
Well, they did one back in the day, like on like one of the systems, like the Atari or a Commodore 16.
No, there was one I think for PlayStation 2 that was under development.
Like
there might have been as well, but there was one that was. They were trying to develop a game, and you can find like on YouTube and stuff like samples of the gameplay. Maybe we can post it. As an extra on the website. And it was my understanding that was. You were going to have a lot of stuff that led up to Escape from New York. It was like a Plissken game, and you might have learned a lot of that backstory.
So you think if you would have
in that game,
in like 15 years ago, if you would have gave me like what property they would have developed into a game, The Thing or Escape from New York, I would say Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And still, it seems like it's such a like they were I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, they were thinking about doing a Dirty Harry thing, and that didn't. They did the animation of that.
It's funny because there are just certain properties that would make amazing video games.
Yeah, they really lend themselves.
I always said like Dawn of the Dead, which I think there is now like a zombie mall game that came out like a number of years ago. But like Dawn of the Dead is like you got to run around the mall.
The Monroe Mall, and you got
to collect things from each store.
Yeah, every store is accessible if you can get the key. It becomes like Zelda or Simon's Quest, where you have to go talk to somebody.
And Escape from New York is like the perfect video game.
Yeah, especially when you have those worlds where you can live within if you're able to like make it like a Grand Theft Auto, where you can have a completely interactive world, like that time when in 2006 when you and I binged and we beat the Warriors game when that came out. I mean, that was great, that amazing that game, and then that Godfather
that's another
game
one.
That came
you got to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, you got
like those are perfect.
You have tasks to do, and then and there's a timetable, especially with like why wouldn't it be like instead of rebooting these and making them movies, you would think that they'd either come out as series anime. Why don't they do like limited run, like they did that Spawn series in the late 90s, the cartoon.
Oh
movie.
yeah, that was a great show.
You know, with what's his face?
Was it Keith David?
Keith David did the voice of Spawn. Like, do stuff like that. Do like a limited run of, you know, like I'm sure there's a lot of like Japanese anime that'd be so sweet.
But yeah, well, they keep dishing out those DC ones. It's
Yeah.
a shame like he's not a comic book property for like Marvel or DC, because then we probably would get
like a proper like
you
like
know, DC like animated straight to video.
Well, they
series.
can call it something else, like have it DC Cinema or something, and then have it be like they can, you know, because you know, for a while, like Marvel owns G.I. Joe, Marvel owns like Transformers, so you can do like, I mean, of course, there's all kinds of them being reformed in the animated form, but like stuff that they've made, like Indiana Jones, you know, whatever came out as like a you know, RoboCop, they had a cartoon, but
yeah,
you know, how cool would it be to like do a serious reboot of RoboCop, you know? You know, there's so many movies. Predator, like there's so many movies out there. I'm doing movies all from '87. That like, you know, that you can like.
There were so many great movies in 1987.
Yeah, that we're gonna do. that have
could be
30
great
years.
cartoons.
Yeah, 30-year anniversaries that you probably hear us talk about this year. But getting back on topic, I can remember back in the day walking into like in the Northeast, we had like Pathmark. You'd go into like Pathmark was a supermarket. You'd go in and like right to your immediate right by like the pharmacy. We've talked about this many times. There'd be like the little VHS aisle, or like there'd be just 3 tiers of VHSs, and all it would just be like the containers, you know, flattened or whatever, or them big 80s clamshell box style, and then you have to go up and get the tape. And I remember I'd be looking, and I don't know if my mom would like deposit me there and go do the shopping, which I can't really think that would be appropriate, or she would just wait with me.
Tie her leash off.
She'd leash me up to a thing. You know, I had one of them when I was little. Like,
one of the shelves.
Yeah, I like that Mike Myers Saturday Night skit where like I was getting too hyper one day, so she tried to get me one of those leashes. So she leashed me to her cart, and then I'd run, and then they would get taunted, and then they would just move the car. But then she realized that wouldn't work, so I don't know what she did. She just beat me, and then she'd calm me down. But I walk in and I go to the video store area, and I'd look up, and I remember like iconically. I remember like Day of the Dead, that freaking cover scared the shit out of me. That was like, you know, X-rated. You wouldn't even think about renting that. And you turn it over and you'd have like people getting their eyes gouged out, or zombies, you know, they're like blue and green walking around the steps. And you're like, oh. And this was another one that Escape from New York scared the shit out of me. You're like looking at like the Statue of Liberty. The iconic poster.
The original poster covers for the videos were awesome.
It's like the video, you know, the Statue of Liberty's head's like in the middle of like, you know, like a New York City street, and they're running away in like one of those really iconic kind of like poses, and it scared the craps out of me. Craps.
Multiple craps. That's how.
I don't know what happened first. If I peed and you know, shit myself, or I shit myself and peed and then, you know, knocked myself out or whatever when I fell. But so it's like, you know, I remember how iconic that, and I remember seeing this at a young age too. Like, it's always been with me. So it's not like sometimes I can remember when I saw the movie for a first time, but when I get below a certain age, it all just mashes together, and it's like it's always been with me.
Well, yeah, I think this movie's that way for me too, and I think we might even in the previous John Carpenter related cast, I might have talked about John Carpenter was a director for me that. In the Mouth of Madness was the movie that made me kind of fall in love with him. But it was one of those things where after I saw that and then I started researching John Carpenter, I realized that he directed all these movies that I loved and that, you know, were part of my childhood and my upbringing. And, you know, obviously, you know, Big Trouble in Little China was a big movie for us, our generation. But Escape from New York was definitely one of those too.
That's certainly, for me, like iconic John Carpenter movies. I don't think for some reason I discovered Halloween until I got into horror. So there's certain horror movies I saw as a child that I didn't make, like American Werewolf in London. I didn't watch for years because that scene where the family gets murdered scared the absolute shit out of me. Yeah. Or like, you know, there's a bunch of Vincent Price movies or older horror movies, or the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But there's certain movies I didn't see until much later. But Carpenter wise, it's like The Thing, Escape from New York, and Assault on Precinct 13, and since we're here, probably Christine.
Yeah, Christine was big for me.
It's like, you know, Assault I saw at a young age where I probably shouldn't have seen, and that's another scene, like the scene with her with the ice cream truck scared the fucking shit out of me. The scene where like the cops are like, you know, we can't get through. I wonder why. What's that noise? Is it raining out? And then like they go up and they look. That scared the shit out of me where they pan up and like the telephone. Construction workers dead hanging from the telephone pole. Yeah. You know, that scared the shit. So Escape, like like The Thing scared the absolute piss out of me, and I remember watching that in I guess kindergarten, because I remember being at kindergarten the next day and looking up at the windows and saying, oh, there's the guy's name was Windows. Maybe these windows are going to turn into the Thing.
Yeah.
You know, but like, it seems like you take a movie like Escape from New York or Assault on Precinct 13, and it's weird because I guess they're Carpenter movies. They are basically action movies, so we would take them and we would sort them in the action genre aisle of a video store, but because they're Carpenter movies, they have an inherent horror about them. They become scary, which I think is really good, because these could have just been straight genre pictures that might not have been good. They could have just been B movies starring, all these, actors.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Carpenter, his Twitter handle is like Master of Horror. I mean, he's kind of known for horror, and I've always said that I personally like a lot of his horror stuff more than I like the action stuff. But I love the action stuff too. But like The Thing, Prince of Darkness, all those movies are like, I love those movies.
See, I like when the director steps out and does something that's different. Like you take Scorsese, and Scorsese comes to mind immediately. It's like gangster movies, but I love his version of Cape Fear.
Yeah.
Like I like when they would, or I even like that other one, Shutter Island. People are like, it's predictable, the ending. But I was like, but it's cool. It's like a genre thriller. It's fun, It's like something you'd watch on a Saturday night, like by a fire, or something like that in the dark, And I like it. So it's like this kind of thing. It's like he is a master of horror, but I love when they step out not of their comfort zone, but do something else and then lend their style.
Well, it's funny because we think of him that way, but talking about just theatrical releases, I mean, Halloween was his first horror movie, and that was his third movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he did Dark Star was a science fiction movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a weird science fiction like comedy. Assault on Precinct 13 is, like you said, kind of considered an action movie. I know you're right. I mean, you can't get away. There are certain motifs that Carpenter's known for, and like The Siege, kind of like people trapped in an environment, is one of them. And Assault Precinct 13 is kind of the start of that for him. And then there were some TV movies, but then
he did an Elvis movie, which is hilarious. That it was like a biopic for television. That's where they met. He met Kurt Russell.
Well, there was a long time there. Carpenter discovered that you could make a good living just writing scripts that never get made. So there are a lot. He wrote a lot of scripts. He was a screenwriter basically through the majority of the 70s.
And that's where this comes out. If he wrote this in like 73 or 74, Escape from New York, and it didn't get made for what is that? Almost like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, he says 73, 74. There's reports 76 because they're saying it's like a comment on the Watergate thing. But so it's funny because Halloween was his first horror movie.
I should preface this that Jay Blake here is like an aficionado on John Carpenter. You've interviewed him a couple times for your book Score to Death. You know a lot about him, so it's always fun to do a Carpenter movie because we get to pick your brain.
Literally one of my 5 favorite filmmakers of all time.
One of my 24 favorite. Yeah, so so it's fun to do these because it's like I don't have to do a lot of research. I could just sit back and just use you.
But you know enough about Carpenter too.
Yeah, but it's fun. The nitty-gritty.
And a lot of those movies we kind of revisited.
We bonded together.
I know. Fell in love with. Yeah. It's funny, you're talking about watching them when you're little. I was just at my brother's for the holidays, and my nephew, his son, is 7, and so there's all this talk.
You're like, I'm going to scare the shit out of you.
Well, no, but there's all this talk now, and we've talked about it before about like how kids are raised now and how it's different, and yada yada yada, and what you show the kids. And I was telling you before we started recording that the best part about being there this during the holiday season this year was that El Rey, the Rob Rodriguez channel, was having like a Godzilla marathon. Yeah. And so I introduced my 7-year-old nephew to Godzilla movies, and he was so into it.
It's so great. And you think about he's 7, and it's like I remember I moved from where I was born in New Haven to the suburb Hamden when I was 7, and I remember that move and like thinking I'm so old at 7. Yeah. And you're not old at 7. I mean, obviously, because you're 7. But it's like I think about how much when I got to that new house that I ended up growing up in until I went to college, like that was already under my belt movie-wise.
Yeah.
So you think of a kid that age now, your nephew's 7, and by that time, you and I, because, you're my age, so we would have already seen, like Escape from New York, The Thing, all these movies we're talking about, all these crazy, so
well, that's that's
so
kind
you think
of where
about showing him these movies.
That's kind of where I'm going, which is like my brother was telling me they discovered on the Roku box, there's like a cartoon channel, so that you can, an on-demand kind of thing. So he was showing my nephew like the Looney Tunes cartoons for the first time, and he said that my nephew laughed so hard he couldn't breathe.
That's interesting because I have a friend of mine that I work with, and he was saying that he showed his daughter the Looney Tunes cartoons, and she'd never seen them, and her response was, why they keep hitting each other?
Yeah,
Why are
well,
they so
that's
violent?
his wife was like, my sister-in-law was like, should you be showing this? They're kind of violent.
Yeah, the chain smoking, drinking, and all, that like that.
And they were watching
Excuse me.
Of Christmas Vacation,
The Chevy Chase movie.
Yeah. And again, it's not a kids movie. I
No.
mean, there's some racy and there's some bad language, and there's a little bit of all those movies.
Suggestions.
Yeah,
and stuff,
it's more
and all,
suggestive. But she was like, "Oh,
some
you think he's
crude language."
So me and my brother were talking, and we're talking about like all the stuff we watched that like you would never show a kid now. And he was like, John Carpenter's The Thing. We watched that. You watched that when you were little. I said, I remember watching John Carpenter's The Thing when I was little, and recognizing that I had seen it before, which means I watched it when I was even younger.
This is you saying this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being at my stepmom's mom's house, and John Carpenter's The Thing was on, and my dad's like, my dad hates horror movies, but John Carpenter's The Thing's, he loves John Carpenter's The Thing, so he put it on, and we were watching.
You say that in that movie, you're like, that's a good movie.
And yeah, and so watching it then, and I was probably like 6, 7, 8, maybe at the oldest, and knowing that I had seen it before.
Yeah.
So, we grew up watching all
That's
kinds
why
of crap.
I remember sitting in kindergarten, and that's what, 83, 84, looking out the windows at the kindergarten room, and it's like, that's, what are you, 5 in kindergarten? I don't know what age you are in kindergarten. So it's like, you think about, and is it basically like playing Russian roulette? Is it like with kids? I mean, are the kids going to turn out, like, would you... I mean, is that, I wouldn't say it's not, you wouldn't call it child abuse, but like if you were to just let your kid watch whatever he wanted nowadays, is that all right? Because back then
I think people would say no, but
you're right. People would say
my
no.
point is always like, we turned out okay.
But I wonder if there was a limit, because I do remember like my dad, he wouldn't let me watch Scarface. I remember that, like that was things like you can't, he wouldn't let me watch Godfather probably because he thought, I'd have to wait till I was older to understand it because it's talking. Yeah. And Scarface was, I would call it gory, but like the scenes with the chainsaw in the bathtub or whatever, and then the cocaine snorting and you want to fuck me, Tony? No, all that. Yeah. So, and then I remember notoriously, my father, we went to see RoboCop in the cinema, and he ended up, the only time he ever used his parental judgment, he threw that car down, was when they were blowing, what's his face, Miguel Ferrer is blowing lines off the girl's tits, and he's like, you're too old, young for this. This is taking a piss, So it's like, you wonder, there must have been, because I wouldn't have seen Day of the Dead back then. There's some movies, like horror movies say, that you wouldn't.
Well, there's also just some movies you wouldn't have had access to.
Yeah, that's true. So I wonder if you had like a on demand.
Like I was saying to my brother, I was like, we went to the movies a lot.
Yeah.
And like my dad took us, and I don't know what year Color of Money is, but
I think it's 87 or 88.
But still, it's like my dad took me and my brother to go see Color of Money, which is not like, there's nothing hard.
It's an adult movie,
but it's not a kid's movie.
Yeah. By no means.
And so I think a lot of our appreciation of cinema comes from the fact that there weren't guidelines, really.
Yeah, what we were exposed to for whatever reason as a kid, but we turned, like you said, we turned out fine, but I'm sure, sadly, there might be people who haven't turned out fine.
Now, interestingly enough, like Escape from New York is a movie that shaped a lot of people. Like, for instance, Dave, our friend Dave, who did the Silver Bullet cast with me last October,
2015.
2 Halloweens ago. Escape from New York was the movie that made him want to make movies. We know Dave we went to film school with Dave.
Yeah.
So Escape from New York was the movie that made him want to make movies. Made him fall in love with cinema. Robert Rodriguez has talked all about how Escape from New York was the movie that made him want to make movies.
There's an author I read called William Gibson who did Neuromancer, a very famous book that I only just discovered last year, and he's the grandfather like cyberpunk, and he kind of termed the term cyberspace, he coined it, and very good book if you've never heard of it. Neuromancer, amazing. And he talks about how influential seeing Carpenter's movie. That book came out in 84, 85. He saw Carpenter's movie, and he says that there's that, like, especially in sci-fi movies, when you just do like one throw certain throwaway lines could be so good.
Yeah.
They don't need any explanation. He says that line where Lee Van Cleef says, "You flew the Gulfire over Leningrad, didn't you?" That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
And he's like, that line is fucking amazing because that just gives you. There's a whole other story
it
there.
Says so much about them that they and his history.
So it's like it's like and then another joke that me and my wife always have is the Ernie line in this movie. He's like, "Oh, wait till I tell Eddie." It's like, who's Eddie? Wait till I tell your steak biscuit in my cab.
Yeah.
So it's like I love, and then we talk about in the first Halloween. You and I have the joke with the story with Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, the grave guy, the cemetery worker is like, and then he
gets an axe and he goes to the garage like, "Will you hurry up?" Like, you never get to finish. So it's always like that. So it's like, you're right, when it's certain things will touch people, and this movie seems like it came out at a time where there was a lot of things going on politically in the 70s into the 80s. There was a shift in power from it went from Republican to Democrat, and then from Democrat back to Republican with Reagan getting in. So and it ushered in that bad 80s, dirty, New York.
So let's say that, if we go there, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the inspiring young people, is that it's just fucking awesome.
It's a good action movie. It's not really like an action, you think about 80s, it's like a thriller.
And there's certain movies, and I do want to get back to like putting it in perspective of when it was made. But I think one of the things, for me anyway, movies that really inspire me to want to make movies are typically ones that are clearly done on a low budget, because they almost seem accessible. Like, you almost seem like you could do it. Mad Max is a movie like that for me.
Are you the one who tells me that? Is it you who has that line that like low budget necessitates creativeness, or is that you?
Oh, well, I talk about that a lot because I
forget now who I talk to.
Yeah, yeah, I always talk about how like low budget restriction on art is in a way like the greatest thing for art, because it makes you be more creative to solve problems, and you have to think outside the box. I would argue that that's why like episodes 1 through 3 of the Star Wars series aren't as good as episodes 4 through 6, because like Lucas could do anything he wanted.
Yeah.
Whereas with 4 through 6, he had to figure out how to problem solve and make things work. But
and you could use that with any, you talk about as early as Romero and Night of the Living Dead. Anybody coming up being that filmmaker like Mean Streets with Scorsese.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, I'm just using that as an example because we see, a lot of people argue, and I would not necessarily be one of them, that the movies are bad, but I would say like Martin Scorsese doesn't need to make 3.5-hour movies.
No.
But the problem is like now he can.
Because,
So every movie is like over 3
That may not necessarily be a good thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But for me personally, things like Mad Max, the Fulci movies, some of the Leone movies, like
when he hits the spaghetti western.
Especially Fistful of Dollars, which isn't my favorite of the series.
Yeah.
But it's a movie when you look at it, you're like, man, I want to make fucking
It's
movies.
a game changer at the time.
Because it's like this, it looks like you might be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think this movie might touch on that for a lot of people.
I mean, for a movie that they only had like between 5 or 7 million to do. I mean, even in $80s,
and it looks great, and it still holds up in a lot of ways. But you can tell that it's doesn't have like that Hollywood polish.
But it doesn't need it, And I never, watching the movie, it never occurred to me that like none of it was shot in New York. It all looks, because we'll get into it where they shot it. It's all it all looks great. So it's weird where you think of like sometimes you can even tell as a kid a movie's low budget. Oh, okay, but like a movie like this, it never dawned on me that there was like a budget restriction because they used that. Even the miniature work, which is like the old school like matte painting on glass or the miniature work is astounding. That it just holds up. Even now it holds up. Like a lot of that stuff, and it's probably because of the cleverness of how they did it or how they shot it. You know what I mean? And it's always with me. It's like seeing the monster always kind of like, it's I like what you don't see. Yeah. So I think if they, if you show it, that's like with CGI in the 90s. It's like once you're able to do it, it's like, that kind of looks stupid.
Yeah. Which is one of the reasons why like The Thing is so brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it defies that rule.
Yeah.
It shows it to you right in your fucking face.
But it's done in so
light, but it's so amazing.
Yeah.
It's like Normally, yes.
And that's a big gamble.
Leave more to the imagination. But if you have somebody with the talent, and in the case of The Thing, we're talking about Carpenter and Rob Bottin.
Yeah.
And Stan Winston, who did the dog effects and stuff in that movie, kind of uncredited almost. When you have people with that talent, you can swing for the fences, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes you hit it out.
Yeah.
And The Thing is an example where the transformation from American Werewolf in London is another example.
Yeah.
And that's right around that same time. That's like the same year almost, if not. Around that time, there was a lot of lot of people with ambition and really trying to.
I mean, you got like the howling silver bullet around there. Like you have all that. Like it's like that early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
Special effects, practical effects were just really what Tom Savini was doing, and Bottin's and Rick Baker. It's amazing.
Normally I would agree with you, but it's tough because then you get examples. Somebody can always throw like a thing in your face, but and there is a lot that you don't see in that movie too. But in terms of,
well, I think practical effects always seem to lend themselves a little more realistic to a certain extent.
Oh, totally.
I mean, like now, in the old days, like if the old monster movies, if it had just a piece of rubber on someone's face, it might look fake. But when you got into the 80s where they were using like Dick Smith's style of latex and prosthetics, and, and they were taking all that time, especially like you look at like Day of the Dead with Tom Savini, like those zombie effects are amazing. And
that stuff is great.
Like him, that whole thing that he like his like piece of the resistance in that movie is like when the guy gets up and his intestines fall out on the floor. That no one knew how he did that, or ripping a guy apart, on screen. It's like, prior to that, I think his big accomplishment was blowing his head up or something, so it's like when you right before you hit CGI, you got practical effects just were looking so good, and then that's also translates into miniature work, and with practical stuff with like you see Blade Runner, with the cars flying around, or you see it's just. It goes back to, like we keep saying, this lost art, like that, like that Duncan Jones, is that the guy's name who did David Bowie's son who did Moon, right? Like they did a lot of practical effects for like the miniature work, and that stuff looked amazing because it was the guys who did Alien, and it's like you don't need CGI. Like for me, my biggest thing is I used to like how, say, James Cameron used CGI in Titanic, or it just furthers the story.
Sure.
For what you can't build a boat that's the size of the Empire State Building, so you have to CGI it. But when you make a monster and then it turns into like it was American Werewolf in Paris was like that, say, and it dates itself when the movie stops down to show you the effect. It's like but then you're right. Then there's movies like The Thing that kind of put that on its end and say no, you could still do it that way.
But it kind of takes like the people that are at the top of their game. It's like the best people in their field to accomplish that. Putting this movie in perspective, we talked about how Carpenter wrote it 73, 74. There's some accounts 76. So let's just say early to mid 70s. At the time, New York was a shithole.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was about to go bankrupt. There was kind of a fiscal issue going on in America, but that really hit New York hard. And then because New York was such a shithole, people were moving out.
Yeah. So
you got even more of an issue where like now people are leaving, so there's consumerism and stuff in New York's even worse. So but
there's no tax revenue coming in, and then Mayor Lindsay asked for a bailout from Washington to help them, and DC said no.
In 1975, and there was like that famous headline that was Ford to City, drop dead.
Yeah.
And there was this big backlash about New York, and everyone was like, let New York burn.
Yeah, and there was the garbage. There was a thing, garbage wasn't picked up for like 2 weeks. They actually ended up laying off like 1,500 to 2,000 cops because they didn't have the money to pay them. And sanitation and police workers, municipality workers were working without being paid. So it was like, and then you're saying people are leaving. So when they're leaving, stuff's becoming vacant. You have the South Bronx, they're finishing urban renewal, they're knocking everything down, and then there's just like where you get to see a lot of that, like in Fort Apache, the Bronx especially, or that other movie Wolfen, where you have entire areas of the South Bronx were just like, it looked like a post-apocalyptic movie, because you have these tenements that are just rubble, and there's blocks that are just empty with just and so New York was in a state of shit in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why anyone would want to live here. Just live through it, you know? Like, you know, it's so amazing to think that, like, you know, I have a couple friends that I work with in the city who they bought property, like, they bought a building, say, in the mid-80s for nothing.
Yeah.
And it's worth $1 gazillion now. They sit on that building down in, like, you know, Alphabet City because... You know, back then it was you can get it for like $1. It was basically, why would you want to buy property? And you know, now you think about that you know how it's such a turnaround the housing value.
The building I live in was built in the 70s in an effort to try to bring people. It's near Times Square, so I mean we're talking the 70s and 80s. Times Square was
it was all
it was like a scary place and a lot of. You know, obviously there's the big grindhouse thing, which is great in terms of the movies being shown and the B movies and the exploitative movies. But there's also a lot of the porn theaters and stuff, and there's a lot of prostitutes and stuff. But the building I live in was built in an effort to bring like wealthy people to try to start to turn this part of town, Hell's Kitchen, over to a nicer. You know, to try to bring, a higher class, for lack of a better term, people to the area and hopefully start to turn the area into a better neighborhood. But what backfired was these were supposed to be like luxury apartments, and then everybody was like, "I'm not moving there." Yeah. No, they couldn't give them away. So essentially, that's what they ended up doing. Was they ended up turning the entire building into like subsidized housing and just started filling it with people on limited income because nobody wanted to live here.
Well, because it was so scary and violent. You had murders and all kinds of stuff was happening at the time. It was.
I talked to my neighbor, is an older woman, and she's been here since the beginning, just about, and she was telling me that she lived. Down a couple of blocks, kind of close to where Hero Boy is, and she was saying that it was really scary. There'd be like prostitutes in the doorway, and people would just break into mailboxes in the building. They'd break into the building and they'd just break into the mailboxes to see if there was any like people sending money to somebody. And so this building was a big deal, but that was part of it. So things like Escape from New York and Warriors, which we talked about, was based on a book that was written before this, but before the 70s, but that's where this like sentiment of
it didn't seem
New York being crappy, and if you want to hear
implausible,
you know, Taxi Driver,
Maniac. I mean, you see where New York was going at that time.
If you want to listen to our big rant about New York film, oddly enough, it's in our Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, we talk about where by the 80s it became just a joke, in Crocodile Dundee and like movies like those 80s kind of movies.
So that's why a subject like a plot like Escape from New York didn't seem that far-fetched.
Yeah. And then
this was even by 81 when it was made, it was still like that.
Oh, it was like
it
that
wasn't until like Giuliani came in, and then it started to get like the Disneyfication of Times Square, as people kind of put it, with trying to really vamp it up and make it more of like almost like a definitely like a tourist attraction, almost like Disney World or something.
Bring it back. I mean, I think there's a really good movie I liked from a couple of years ago called The Most Violent Year, and it's because 1982 was the most violent year in New York City's history. It hit like a kind of a cusp there, and certainly, you just think of at the time there was that's why you have Death Wish, the Vigilantes, and you have these movies. It all fed into that, or you have just the city was rotting for all the other economic reasons that you had all those other big cities in in all of America rotting. And then at the time when Carpenter said he wrote this, he said it was kind of Watergate was going on, and then there was a backlash to Watergate and people, the people who were in power and government and stuff like that. And then he sat on it, and then when the movie ended up kind of coming out and come to fruition, Carter, his administration was ending, and you had the Iranian. They had seized an embassy, so they were holding
it was a big hostage situation, which is the
almost
longest
a year.
Yeah, it was like 400 days.
400 days or so.
So it was like over a year.
Yeah, and then they ended up giving them up when Reagan came in.
So this movie came out the same year that ended. So there was this big hostage situation. So I think that's another reason why this movie kind of resonated at the time. And we're talking about the world's a scary place now, obviously, but at the time it was like things were starting to, seemed very bleak.
And it's funny because, history repeats itself. So, whatever side of the political aisle you fall on, people have the same problems where it's like, compare Reagan to Bush or Bush to Reagan or Carter to Obama, Obama to Carter. So,
just you take the Iranian situation and you got the terrorists.
Yeah, that's happening now with ISIS and stuff, and
politics, but, it's the world itself is kind of scary. And that was like the way the future was viewed for the most part in the late 70s and early 80s was going to be like a very post-apocalyptic. We had the Cold War was going on, and so a lot of they talk about Leningrad, the Siberian Wars of New York. That's all has to do with like Russia, which again,
it's all
it's
about
kind of like you said, history's kind of repeating itself. But at that time, in 1981, when this movie came out, Rocky didn't go to Russia yet and fight truck.
So we still had that really...
and bridge the gap.
Yeah, we still were really talking about Star Wars technology and meaning that, like, Reagan talking about, like, making a system in space to be able to shoot down any ballistic missiles, the intercontinental ballistic missiles. And
I think the interesting thing about... One of the beautiful and interesting things about art, and especially cinema for me, is that the movies that are made are always a reflection of the time. So when you get into science fiction and these kinds of movies that are trying to forecast the future, how people are expressing what they think about the future at that time is completely reliant or shaped by what's going on at the time. So there's no coincidence that things like Escape from New York, Warriors, Mad Max, are coming out at the time because the success of Mad Max maybe led to these other movies getting made. But also, like, this was written, Escape from New York was written before Mad Max came out.
Yeah.
So this was what's going on in the zeitgeist and stuff. And you can always, like in the 50s, science fiction was all about monsters and radiation,
the atomic bomb and the Cold War,
and also some paranoia because of what's going on there. So this just falls into another
setting the stage of what's happening.
Yeah, it's just contextually it's representative of what's happening. And I think that's always important.
And then if you're a student of history, it's funny that just everything just repeats itself. it all just comes around because you could probably take Escape from New York, and it's as implausible as it is now, and it's silly. Like you'd never make a person out of New York. It's just if you take away that big elephant in the room, it's still a movie that could. If you reshape it somehow, it could very easily be done today in a certain way, Oh
yeah,
with
totally.
Like Supermax prisons.
They're
stuff.
talking about remaking it. Neil Marshall is a director that is another director that watched this movie and wanted to make movies when he was a kid, and he'd made a movie called Doomsday, which essentially it's a remake of this movie, except for it's like in Glasgow. It's like Escape from Glasgow, Scotland. It's not Escape from New York.
Oh, that's from a couple years ago, like 2007, 2009.
And even the girl who's the main character, who's like the Snake Plissken character, it's a female, but even she's got one eye in it, and she has to go in there to retrieve something. Just recently, this past year, Carpenter and the company that made this movie won a lawsuit against Luc Besson, because Luc Besson had written and produced a movie called Lockout with Guy Pearce, which was essentially Escape from a space station. There was a penitentiary in space, and the president's daughter goes up, and she gets trapped in there, and Guy Pearce has to go up and get her. And they just won like $500,000. Carpenter, Nick Castle, who co-wrote this with Carpenter, and the company that made this just won the lawsuit.
Really? They got that? Because what? It was just so many of the plot points were similar?
They sued, and they pointed... there was too many similarities.
You think like Super Fortress. What's that Lambert movie from with Alcatraz in space?
Oh, Fortress.
Yeah, you think they would sue, those people would sue. So
but I was shocked that really you're going to sue Luc Besson, but you don't sue Neil Marshall.
Yeah,
because that movie Doomsday is exact. Even when I saw it, I was like this. I like this better when John Carpenter did it. I mean, maybe if I saw it now and I'm separated from it.
Yeah,
because that was my initial. I only saw it one time.
Well, that was
my initial reaction. Was like.
It's when there's just such a ripoff, It's like they should have sued the guys who did Escape from L.A. When it's that much of a ripoff, it's like, that's not even clever. It's just like,
if you haven't seen Escape from New York, for one, shame on you.
Yeah.
Two, it's about, basically in a nutshell, the president is on his way to some kind of conference.
The Hartford Summit in Hartford,
the Hartford
Connecticut.
Summit that's going to end basically World War III.
Yeah, with the Chinese and
the Russians.
His
flight, we don't. It's interesting because we don't.
Well,
there's so much implied.
This is what I love too. So, to stop you for 1 second, Carpenter writes this in the mid-70s. I just finished a book, another great one that is highly recommended, called Days of Rage.
The Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree. And it's about this tree that just gives itself away to this kid. It's so horrible at the end. I don't want to tell you how it ends. It's called Days of Rage by Brian Burroughs, and it's about the 70s counterculture, and that, like, the Black Panthers and the BLA, Black Militant Army, and the all these different things, Weathermen, that came out that people don't really talk about anymore, that was basically like, say, the far left. Yeah. And in the 70s, you had these groups that were like these long names, the Weather Underground, the Siberian Liberation Army, the Siamese. They had all these crazy front cult. And they'd be doing these bombings until the mid 80s. These groups were still robbing banks to try to get money to be able to do their cause, because they wanted to take down. They didn't like what America was like. And people, you can argue if they were doing it, their cause, justly because they were robbing banks and killing people, and they tried to bomb buildings that they thought were fascist, or they were attacking capitalism. But you always had these. I literally just finished this book, and up until the early 80s, you'd have these random pipe bombings at places, at Bank of America or hit this place, and they would issue this communique, and then the communique, "We are the Weather Underground, and we hate you fascist pigs, you son." So watching this movie, it's like, you're saying that the plane is taken over, and you have this girl in the cockpit, and she's like saying, "We are the new wave front, you fascist." And it's like, and then you look at the third installment of the Dirty Harry series, The Enforcer. Yeah. That's what it's about too. It's like this.
It's
you have those. At the time, that was a really realistic thing.
It's becoming more realistic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now we're dealing with like ISIS.
Oh yeah. But you have like the American, in the context of Escape from New York, you have the American,
militant American.
Yeah, they're taking over and they're trying to kick it to capitalism or whatever. You. So they're doing this, and that's what they do. Somehow there's a siege on. It's
one of the brilliant things about this movie is because that's a movie in and of itself. I mean, it's called Air Force One. In a way, like you can have
the Russians. Good.
You can have a whole movie that's just about that.
Yeah,
but here we get
the very end of it.
We know that there's a jet flying over New York, and they're trying to figure out what it is. It turns out it's Air Force One, and it has gotten taken over by the nurse from Halloween.
Yeah, awesome. She's killed the cock. She's locked herself in the cockpit, and she's reading a fucking communique.
Yeah.
It's very scary. See, this is all the stuff when you're a kid you start remembering.
That's kind of like the brilliant thing about one of the brilliant strokes of genius about it's a kind of a lesson in storytelling.
You don't need that.
You don't need this. You don't need to know how they got in the plane. Yeah. How they did this, how they took it over. We don't need all that story. I mean, it would be great if that was your story.
Yeah, but
it's not relevant for this. We just have to know that this is what happened.
Which is like the beginning of the movie that ends up getting cut. We can talk about. He didn't need that, so he's like, well, we don't need it.
So the jet ends up crashing in New York City. The president escapes in an escape pod.
Which doesn't look very safe, I'm going to say.
New York City is now is the only penitentiary in America.
Yeah.
It holds like 3 million people. They basically put a wall around New York, down the Jersey coast of the Hudson River, up Brooklyn, through Brooklyn and Queens, just walled in Manhattan.
It kept the water area, the waterfront, which I would have thought they would have just bordered the Manhattan Island, but they kept the Manhattan Island, and like you're saying, they kept the water, the Hudson and the East River and the Harlem River, and then they just walled up the mainland around it.
So Manhattan Island is just it's a prison.
It's unclear. They're not giving them. All electric is supposedly turned off in gas, and it's unclear. Are they sending food in? I don't know.
They send food in. Here's the
there's a lot of it's like how do it's like where are all the social groups be like this is not humanitarian.
Here's where this is going to get sketchy, and we can talk about the novelization,
which we have to because
throughout this story, and I can explain things.
You should throw, or we should
talk about, or we can talk about it all in one chunk later because the novelization answers
almost a
lot of these questions.
So there's a novelization by Mike McQuarrie, right?
Yeah.
That we always love to tie the novelizations in, as if you listened to us before, because we see that a lot of these times, a lot of these novelizations answer all these questions because they have a lot of time to write.
Yeah.
They have a lot of time to fill in, so they answer a lot of these questions.
Yeah, and so basically novelizations are usually based on an earlier version of the script while the movie's being made, because they want the novelization to come out either just before the movie comes out or in conjunction with the release of the movie. So it's not like they can wait. A writer can wait to watch the movie and then write the novelization. He's working on scripts, and as we know, things get cut out from movies.
What's also brilliant is a lot of times they have to have questions they have to answer, the author, whoever's doing this. So if you have a movie you love and there's a novelization, you might 50-50 shot that there's going to be a lot more backstory that's not in the movie that ends up in the novelization.
Sure, and there's things mentioned even in the movie, but because I read the novelization in conjunction for this podcast,
pretty sweet.
A lot of this. A lot of it's combined for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. Like,
that's how I was when we did Dirty Harry. I was like, I couldn't figure out
what's this in the movie. Or is this in
there's a lot of stuff that I don't see that they leave out. But there's, like you're saying, there's a lot of hinting about Snake's Plissken's past, about Hawks, who's Lee Van Cleef's past, and it's all. So basically, in the World War III, the exposition about this World War III we got into.
Yeah. So
I think the best way to tackle it is just to
kind of fill in the blanks as we go through the plot here. So to answer your question about food, when he goes to the Chuck Full of Nuts and he meets the girl,
Maureen,
and she's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, the crazies are out because it's the end of the month; they're out of food."
Yeah,
that's implying that at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, at the very end of the month or beginning of the month, there's a food drop. And that's what we see in Central Park.
Oh, when they're waving them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They drop the food in the middle of Central Park, and then that's the food. People have to fend for themselves. So that's to answer your question about about that. In terms of backstory,
well, so President finished the president crashes here. He's stuck here. And then we can get into why, but they have to get him out.
The prisoners are holding him hostage. Yeah. They tell Lee Van Cleef, who's the warden of the prison, that you need to get. Lee Van Cleef goes to inspect the
crash site.
The crash site, and hopefully
within seconds get the president.
Hopefully find the president.
In his escape
he gets
pod.
there, and Romero's there.
Yeah,
who is
Frank Doubleday,
played by Frank Doubleday.
Amazing.
Who had guest appearance in a lot of 70s and 80s television shows, but he's also in Assault on Precinct 13. He's the guy with the sniper rifle that's driving around in a car.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Frank Doubleday delivers kind of like a beautifully weird performance in this movie. But there's an aspect of the movie that never got fleshed out, which is that a lot of the people, especially the crazies, they're cannibals.
Yeah.
And so Romero is like, he's a very odd looking guy, and his teeth are supposed to be like shaved down to points. But he shows up and he tells Lee Van Cleef, you got 30 seconds to get out of here. And he shows that he gives them the president's finger to show that they have
presidential freaking ring on it.
So Lee Van Cleef leaves, and then there's a lot of stuff in the book about when he gets back and he's talking to like the secretary, who's played by Charles. I don't know if it's Charles Cyphers, who's in Halloween. He plays the sheriff in Halloween.
Yeah,
he's the weather guy in The Fog. There's a lot of stuff there. Here we just get a very small snippet where he puts him on the phone with the vice president, and Lee Van Cleef's just like, I want to go in and I want to try a rescue mission, because basically they were like, we need to go in and get him, and Lee Van Cleef's like, if we go in with force, they're going to kill him.
Yeah. And
the importance of the president is that he's got this audio cassette that he needs to get to the summit.
Yeah,
it's really like that's more important than the president is.
It becomes, because they throw this all on Pliskin's back, where it's like, we need to get the president out. You need to get him out alive. You need to get him out with the tape. We don't really care about the president, but then there's this clock where it's like, you got to get him up to the Hartford summit, because if the Hartford summit's over before so the whole world's going to blow up.
Basically, like this is our last ditch effort to try to end this ongoing war.
Yeah.
And so they need the president, and they need this tape so that they can end basically.
Do you know anything about nuclear fusion? No. Okay, then don't. So it's like it's a lot of MacGuffins there to just the summit. They have to get this tape up as a gesture of goodwill towards China and Russia before the summit ends to, like you're saying, end World War III and save the freaking planet.
So they can't go in with force because they'll kill the president. So they're going to try to sneak somebody in. They just recently arrested Snake Plissken, who's like a legendary criminal who has a military record, which there's a lot of more backstory to that in the book. And so he says we'll sneak in Plissken and he'll get a pardon. Yeah. That's his reward for if he can get the president out in 20. It's also weird because they're like, you got to get him out in 22 hours, but he's got a 23-hour clock.
Yeah. Well, I thought they gave him the 23-hour clock because it'd take an hour for them to get him on the glider. But then when he's looking at the clock, it's already like 20. He's like, come on, you're wasting time. You got to de-ice the plane. My things are going to dissolve.
Yeah. So for further incentive, because they're basically putting him in a glider, so they could take the glider and just leave New York. They inject these like 2 little bombs in his neck, and they're encased in something that's going to dissolve in his body. And in 22 hours, once they're dissolved, they'll go off and just basically kill him.
I think very plausible with technology nowadays. You could probably do something like that,
Yeah.
It's like all this stuff they are really checking off all the boxes of, get away from the fantastic plot of saving the president, bringing this audio tape to the Hartford summit. It's like, you're right. He needs to be able to get there. He needs to get to the president. He can't just fly away with the glider. They're making it so he has to go. They kind of force his hand,
So basically that's our plot. We have this guy who's gonna go to prison anyway.
Yeah.
He's going there anyway. Like he even says that to Lee. He's like, either way I'm going in. What do I care? Sure.
Yeah.
And he's got 22 hours or so to get the president out, because after 22 hours, the Chinese and the Russian ambassadors or whatever, they're going to leave the summit, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So that's the plot in a nutshell, is this mission of our hero Snake Plissken, who is an interesting hero because there are no real socially redeeming qualities about Plissken. No. He's like, we more like him just because he's cool.
He's a badass. He's the anti-hero.
Even like Mad Max had reason.
Yeah.
He was after revenge for like.
Well, he's
spoiler alert.
It
was a revenge plot.
We've said this a lot, that Carpenter likes to make westerns in disguise, and this is like another example of him making kind of a western, because the character here is just basically the lone sheriff or gunfighter, or even he's like the Yojimbo, hired gun that comes into town and plays both sides for his own, and then you like him just because he does all the things you always want to do, stand up to.
We don't know anything about him, and like you alluded to, the one scene where we would have learned anything about him was the opening scene was originally that he robs a bank.
It's like 10 minutes of the first 10 minutes.
Basically, the first reel of the movie, 10 minutes of the movie is this bank robbery scene, and he's got a partner.
Yeah, Taylor.
Named Taylor. And there's a little bit of exposition given back and forth between the two of them, that they have a relationship. He's got this partner.
And this was a scene that for years was thought to be lost. And then I remember when you got a special edition of like the VHS, we watched it in your dorm room at college, and it got really annoying because we were trying to watch it and there was like voiceover commentary. And I was like, shut up so we can watch it. And they cleaned it up pretty good because they found it like in like the salt mines in like some Utah vault or in Arizona or something like that. And I think now it's readily available. You can see it. And it's like the only time
it's on the Blu-rays and DVDs.
Yeah,
now. I mean, it's from like a work print.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's not like they can't remaster it to look as good as the movie. But considering
it has very much like that Tom Selleck movie Runaway with Gene Simmons. It has that kind of a feel to it.
Yeah,
because there's like little robots at the beginning, like in the bank, and it's all underground. And they have it's a great idea where they rob the bank, and it's just like Plissken, like, as a maintenance worker, and he does something, he leaves the bank while it's closing, and then his friend hotwires the subway, which is underground, which goes from like...
It's a transatlantic subway system.
Awesome idea. So it's like going from city to city, so you can get on that in D.C., and you can end up in San Francisco or Texas or whatever. Yeah. So he hotwires it to end somewhere at the end of the line, and it's the only time when they get on the train again and they think they're free, you see Plissken actually smirks. Yeah. And it's the only time he actually like smiles in the movie, which is like, so you really see he has affinity for this person. And then when they get off the subway, they realized it was a robbery, and his friend gets killed, and and then he gives up, and that's the beginning of the movie.
And Plissken gets caught because he goes back for him. So that's like the only instance in the movie where we see anything really redeemable about
or a backstory even.
Yeah, like backstory, but we see that like this guy was important to him.
Yeah.
He gets caught. He could leave. He had a window
to get out. It's like heat. He could have got out of there.
He could have gotten out of there.
Yeah, Carlito, man, you just killed Benny Bronco from the Bronx.
But instead he goes back for his friend.
Yeah.
And that's how he gets caught. Aside from that, which isn't in the movie, Russell explains Snake Plissken as like a guy who's only worried about the next 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Like he lives for the next 60 seconds. The next minute, he's only there. He doesn't care about anything other than survival.
Yeah, and they have this, and then we have the World War III, and then there becomes this national police force, and that's headed by Lee Van Cleef, who's also the warden of the New York maximum security prison.
Yeah.
So that's our first scene is them bringing him to be brought in. And I like the idea, like when they get there, you see them getting like processed, and you have like the uncredited Jamie Lee Curtis, her voiceover, which is also
she's the narrator in the beginning,
and she's also in the deleted scenes. She's in the bank. She's that narrator in the bank scenes, like the bank is closing. There's been a robbery, you know. But she's a narrator at the beginning.
No, follow the orange line.
Yeah, if you decide to terminate yourself now, just let your supervisor know, and we will terminate and cremate you on premises. It's like it's so heavy.
Yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell the plot of the movie. Now, I don't know. Do you want to get into some of the backstory and stuff that the book talks about?
Well, then
kind of like fill in.
So then, Lee Van Cleef's like bring in Snake Plissken, and then that's when he pitches the story to him.
Yeah.
Plissken, who's very much like Clint Eastwood type in this. It's very much like him playing how Eastwood would have played it.
Yeah, well, Russell. Obviously, Carpenter wrote the script. Carpenter wrote the script in the mid-70s, like we said. He was, in the early 80s, he's working on a movie called The Philadelphia Experiment.
Which was a novel which they wanted to make into a movie.
Which they ended up making into a movie a few years later. But he had a 2-picture deal with, was it Avco? I forget the name of the company that made this movie.
Yeah.
But he made The Fog, and he was going to do The Philadelphia Experiment for a second movie. They were running into problems with the script. He was writing the script. There was just issues that were like coming, and it was taking longer than expected. So then Carpenter's like, well, if you don't care about, like, if you don't mind, if you don't want to spend more time trying to work this out, I have this other script called Escape from New York. They read it, they like it. Then Carpenter brings in Nick Castle, who's a member of the infamous band, the Coupe de Villes.
Yeah.
He played the Shape, a.k.a. Michael Myers, at Halloween. He directed Last Starfighter, which we talked about. And it's funny, researching this movie, we talked about how that opening scene of Last Starfighter is a lot like a musical without music.
Yeah.
Nick Castle's parents were choreographers.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we mentioned that in when we did Last Starfighter. But he did The Boy That Could Fly, one of those Dennis Menace movies. So Nick Castle has become a director in his own right.
So Carpenter says he wrote the first draft as like an action pick, and he kind of credits Castle interjecting the humor in
he created the
dark
character of Cabby.
Yeah.
And a lot of the humor.
That you see those lines that are kind of like the New York touches that they say, like,
Now, Russell gets cast because Carpenter fights for him. Yeah. Basically, they want the studio wants a bigger star.
They were going for Tommy Lee Jones at the time. They were looking at Jeff Bridges and Nick Nolte, who both say no. They look at Chris Christopherson. The studio also wants Charles Bronson, which I think would have been pretty cool.
And Charles Bronson, from what I heard, really wanted to do it.
But he was too old. Carpenter thought he was too old, as well as Carpenter was worried about a star that established, because Carpenter wants control over everything.
Yeah, Carpenter basically said he's too old for it, and he was intimidated.
But I will say, in an alternate reality, that would have been pretty sweet to see. You get Charles Bronson, because even like in Death Wish, which is 6 years before, even though he's like 50, he's jacked. So it'd be cool to see him like, we're gonna go inside.
I almost feel like a Snake Plissken, a little bit older than Russell was when he made this. Would have worked. Maybe would have even been better.
I mean, they even said they toyed with the idea of Eastwood. I don't know why it didn't go down that road, but Eastwood at the time he hit 50 in 1980, and then they even said Chuck Norris, and Chuck Norris turned it down, which would have been a completely different movie.
But Carpenter had worked with Russell on the Elvis movie and liked Kurt Russell. Russell was a child star through television, and
his father was Bing Crosby, Bing Russell, whoever else was named Bing, and he was a character actor in the 50s. So Kurt Russell got born into that studio.
You could see Russell in episodes of
Sea Hunt. He's in an episode, I think,
Gilligan's Island,
of maybe either
Lost
Hazel
in Space,
or Dennis the Menace.
He's in some Dennis the Menace episodes. And then he became a kind of this Disney kid star in the 60s.
I'm thinking of Jeff Bridges because of Lloyd. I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. I'll forgive you.
Thank you. But yeah, then he gets into the Disney system and he meets Walter.
And he makes all
Disney.
Those like the computer that wore tennis shoes and
the Jodie Foster kind of like those movies at the time.
So oddly enough, he gets cast as Elvis in this TV movie that Carpenter does. But Carpenter loves working with them because he grew up in the business and part of like the quote unquote studio system. Carpenter says he's his kind of actor, which means he comes to work prepared. There's no like foolish games involved. There's no drama. He comes, he hits his mark, and he knows his lines.
Yeah, James Cagney used to say that's the biggest thing about acting: know your lines and hit your mark.
And so Carpenter fights for Russell to play Pliskin, and Russell has been wanting to break out of that.
But it's like the Michael Keaton situation prior to Batman, where it's like people are like, how can you serious? Yeah. You're going to have Kurt Russell? Because you think about, like you're saying, prior to that, there's not really. He played Elvis, but he was doing Disney movies.
Yeah.
As a child actor. He's only like 30 by the time this movie comes out, which is crazy to think. I thought he was like in his 40s when I watched it. I was like, Jesus, I'm getting old.
But Russell really kind of embraces the character, gets in shape for it.
Yeah, gets on a weird diet to keep himself in shape.
And Russell's the one that brings up the idea of the eye patch.
Yeah,
he's like, I think I should wear an eye patch.
Sweet. And doesn't he go to the costume designer and they kind of he picks the costume out?
Yeah, they pick out the costume and they're talking about him and Carpenter talk about like he's from the military, but he was in like the Siberian War, so what would the camouflage be? It wouldn't be green, so like that's why his camouflage pants are like white and gray and black.
Yeah,
and he has this idea he wants to have like a self-lighting cigarette that they could never figure out how to do on set. But he wanted to like lift the eye patch up at one point and show how mangled his eye was. The Carpenter's like, we don't have money or time
can't do that.
to do that. But Russell also says that this is his Escape from New York is his favorite movie that he's made.
Yeah.
And he loves
his favorite character and his favorite movie.
Yeah,
right?
and he feels that in a lot of ways Pliskin is very much almost like the love child of Carpenter and Russell. Like he's a culmination of the two of them.
And I've heard Carpenter talk about that he grew up with a guy, or he knew a guy that grew up in Cleveland, and then the guy when he went to high school in Cleveland knew a guy named Snake.
Yeah, Carpenter had a friend who knew a guy in Cleveland
in high school
whose name was Snake Plissken, had a snake tattoo and was kind of like a high school tough guy
who can make the snake dance. And the tattoo was on his stomach, like a cobra tattoo or whatever.
And so that's where the idea for the name Snake Plissken comes from.
Yeah.
He wanted, and that's just a cool name.
Yeah, and then Russell takes the idea, and then he says, I guess when Lee Van Cleef was cast for the role, he says like, okay, I'm going to look at like how he looks at how Eastwood looked at playing the character in the spaghetti westerns because Lee Van Cleef was in 2 of the 3 Eastwood spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
So he kind of feels it that way. And it's almost like how you see Jack Burton to me is like an homage to John Wayne.
Yeah,
it's the same
very
kind
much
of,
so. I mean, he even adopts a little bit of like the way he speaks.
Eastwood's cadences.
Yeah. It's like
I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, it's not so. It's a little bit of an impression, but less an impression of more of just trying to like.
I think
how
it's like an
would
homage.
Eastwood play that?
Yeah. It's certainly not. He's not going through. He's not doing. Through beats as Eastwood, but it's certainly like it's there. I love it because I'm a huge Eastwood fan, so I have such an affinity for it. So he gets that role kind of down, and they give him like a Mac 10 with like a scope and like a suppressor and all these other kind of like I think he's like a 357 and knives and stuff like that. And they end up shooting the movie, which is funny, in East St. Louis because at the time in the mid 70s. East St. Louis had a big urban fire in like 75 or 76 on the waterfront. It kind of gutted like a whole area of the downtown.
Yeah, big chunk because I mean they were shooting. They had run of like 10 blocks at a time.
Yeah, they would turn the power off and like they were really accommodating. Now this past October, I was on the debate trail with my job, and I was in St. Louis for one of the presidential debates, and we were there for like a week. And we were near Washington University in the Del Mar Loop area of St. Louis, and we would go downtown to where the arch is, and that's St. Louis, Missouri, and then there'd be the Mississippi River, and across that, they'd be East St. Louis, which is Illinois.
Yeah.
And they told us, do whatever you want. St. Louis is a rough city in certain areas, so just watch out, but whatever you do, they said, do not go across the river to East St. Louis. And they said, like, it's so bad that even municipalities, like, they stop delivering garbage pickup, mailmen. Sometimes police won't come because it's so bad, the crime in their area. So they really warned us, like, not to go to East St. Louis. So, like, of course, a couple of my friends, that's the first thing they do. They go, like, and they find laundromats and do their laundry in East St. Louis. But so East St. Louis has this huge reputation of being like this hellhole, and so they end up
likely started because of that fire.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what it was like before
it's
the fire.
It's the urban decay, because they wanted this a city that looked like an eastern city, like a northeastern, like a Philadelphia or a New York or an Albany.
Well, they needed an actual urban environment.
So it looks it couldn't be like L.A. or some back studio backlot. So they were able to find East St. Louis, which ends up, because they shoot all at night, and ends up being great. They have huge blocks they can play with, and the city lets them turn the power off.
So the majority of the exteriors are shot there. The theater and the train station are actually across the river
in St. Louis, Missouri.
Missouri.
And then they also
and a lot of the interiors. I think the other thing that people, when they say they shot a lot of it, or they shot the movie there, for the most part, it's mostly just the exteriors. A lot of the interiors were actually shot in L.A.
Yeah, and then I think the other key thing was they had access to this bridge, which is called like the Rolling Rock, or I forget what
old something
rock bridge. And
which was a bridge, an old chain of rocks bridge.
Yeah, and that was, they wanted to they call it in the movie the 69th Street Bridge, but I think they wanted it to be the 59th Street Bridge, which we have in Manhattan, which leads to Roosevelt Island.
Yeah,
and they Carpenter and the company buys it for $1. They can do whatever the hell they want to it, and then at the end of the shooting, they
sell it back to them for $1.
Yeah, which is amazing.
There must be
they could have blew the whole bridge
weird,
up.
Must be some kind of weird legalities. Like, we can't let you sit there unless use it unless you
buy it. So $1. So that was also another linchpin.
And that's the other thing, is we talk about how the island of Manhattan is surrounded by these walls. The bridges still exist, but they're mines.
Yeah.
So they're almost impossible to
cross. You see that right at the very beginning, to give you a setup. You see like these two poor pieces of shit who are just like on a raft they made like out of like food, and they're trying to like with just like, it looks like they have like freaking pieces of wood, just like planks of wood, and
it's like how you imagine like they talk about the Alcatraz escape,
and the England brothers
made it out of
Frank Morris getting off of there,
rain slicker.
And so you get the setup of how that you have the helicopters patrolling the waters, like you're saying. Everything's fortified, the bridges are mined, and there's watchtowers. You're not going to get out, so there's no people getting out. So they send in Snake Plissken.
Yeah. So the thing about the novelization is...
I'm sorry. So Lee Van Cleef and Russell Snake have the interaction. And this is where, I guess, in the novelization, some stuff,
Well, even before that, there was the novelization, not the weird thing, but the thing about the novelization is he doesn't even get to Manhattan until midway through the book. So there's a lot of stuff in the beginning. The robbery scene is very long, much more involved than it was in the deleted scene of the movie. If you watch the deleted scene, which I think we might put up a link to watch it on YouTube if you haven't seen it before. And there's a ton of backstory about Plissken. The biggest chunk is you learn that Plissken, basically World War III happens, and the entire world is like
gas,
in upheaval.
Right?
And one of the first things that gets hit in the war is Manhattan. And there's a big explanation about how even though it's, I guess it starts happening in the 80s, all the countries involved make a pact that they're not going to use nuclear weapons. And they think that they're going to use the nicer weapon of chemical warfare. And so New York gets hit with chemical warfare, and the gas, the people that don't die from the gas go crazy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why they just...
like the fallout, the.
So they end up initially walling in New York just to keep the people in.
That turns into like a zombie situation, almost like 28 Days Later or something kind of crazy. That's another. You can make a TV series out of that.
People go.
We're inventing TV series right now.
So the people in New York start going crazy. The people that don't get out and are saved, they start going crazy. They become cannibals.
Yeah. It's like that. What's that Romero movie that they remade? That was actually really good. The remake, The Crazies.
Oh yeah.
That's all about that. People going crazy.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's kind of it. And
so the novel gives the exposition of actually why New York they suddenly, because it's kind of unclear, and that I think is, if you want to fault this movie for anything, is one of the things nowadays with the aging. It's like, well, why would they just take a regular city and just wall it up? It's because if it was already attacked and it was gutted.
Yeah. By 1997, when the movie takes place, they talk about how the West Coast is like a wasteland.
Yeah.
And throughout the country.
And like they say, with the voiceover that's in the movie, with Jamie Lee Curtis uncredited voiceover, says by 89, the crime rate has doubled like 400%.
Yeah. And
then they make it like a 90 or 91, they make a national police force. And then in 91 or 92 is when or 97 is when they turn.
Well, 97 is when the movie takes place.
So maybe 92, they turn New York City into this federal prison.
And large parts of the country are under this kind of gas poisoning that people are going crazy. So the place is
and that's the joke, because when Lee Van Cleef says to Russell, I want you to get the president out, he goes like, the president of what?
Yeah. And so that's the world we're in. Now Pliskin, he's a military guy. He goes into the military. They describe him well. They're like, some people are good at, some people can play beautiful music. Some people can do this. Like inherently they have a God-given talent. Pliskin's talent is he can make war. And so
it's pre-Rambo.
And so he goes into the military. He's he's decorated, the youngest guy. Even Van Cleef says it in the movie, you're the youngest guy to be rewarded whatever from the president. Pliskin becomes a bit of a legend and a hero in this war because he heads a squad that has a really big success rate, and they did some kind of crazy mission where they saved the most amount of people and lost the least amount of people ever in the war. So has this big success rate, and he gets brought in on he and his guys get put into a mission where they're going to fly the Gulf Flyer
in Leningrad.
Yeah. And basically what the mission is, they tell him somebody's been captured. You need to go and save him before he spills the beans, before he gives the Russians, he confesses to the Russians secrets.
Yeah.
You need to get there before that happens. He gets there with his team. Shit hits the fan.
Is this all told in backstory? Or is this actually
it's
told?
It's just like interspersed.
Excuse me.
Like as you're, like it's just like it's just like in the first 5 pages of the book.
Yeah.
We're talking about this during the bank robbery.
Oh, okay.
They're just kind of like giving some backstory while action is happening. Snake gets there. Shit hits the fan. He and his team, they can't save the guy. So instead, they set charges and they bury the guy under like 5 stories of building, like so that he won't spill the beans. Everybody in his platoon or whatever, his team dies except for Taylor, who's the guy from the bank robbery scene we were just talking about. That gets
the deleted scene,
Snake loses his eye in that. Basically, something blows up, and we're talking about chemical warfare and the gases and stuff. Something blows up and like shrapnel hits his goggles and breaks his goggles, and the gas is what ruins his eye.
And you also see in the deleted scene, Taylor walks with a limp.
Taylor walks with a limp because they get into like the glider. They get out, but when they get out, they crash, and Taylor shatters his knee in the crash. The book always talks about Snake Plissken's eye, how it's like it's throbbing, hurts. I talk about the pain that he goes through and how it shoots down into his head, down his spine. He knows it's going to rain because
just like arthritis in the knee.
Yeah. So the eye is like this ongoing. Like they talk about, he suffers from this eye. He's in rehab. He was in the hospital or whatever. Taylor comes to visit him and says, it was bullshit. Like the whole thing was bullshit. Really what happened was the the American government sent the guy in to make the Russians think they captured him, and the guy was going to feed him false intel.
Son of a bitch.
And they sent Pliskin in just to make it look more legitimate. But the Russians never...
It's like a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah, but the Russians never bought it.
Or Clyde
They
Klussler.
knew the guy was bullshit.
Son of a bitch.
So Pliskin went in, and his guys went in.
All for nothing. They all were
for
expendable.
no reason. And that's when Pliskin turns into Pliskin.
Oh, he gets totally disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Disenchanted with the world.
Yeah, and that's when he becomes like
the soldier of fortune.
Like the drifter.
Mercenary.
Guy. And when Taylor dies at the end of the robbery, it just basically says like, when Taylor died, a piece of Pliskin died too, and then he didn't care about any. Taylor was the only other thing that he cared about other than himself.
So it was like his last connection with like the human race.
Yeah, it was the only other connection to humanity for
Yeah.
Pliskin. So when Taylor died, that was it. That's why, like, when he gets to the thing, he doesn't give a fuck about anything. He goes and the crazies are trying to rape some girl, and in the theater in the movie and in the book, Pliskin just walks right by because he doesn't care about anything other than himself at this point.
Yeah.
So that's like Pliskin's backstory. We learn all that. There's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff. We learn about Hauk.
Yeah, Lee Van Cleef's character, he comes in part in the prison.
He was
because
also in Leningrad in the book.
He's a badass as well.
They talk about how he was a badass in the same war. That's how he knows about Pliskin, and how Pliskin knows about him, even though they've never met. He's much more like Pliskin in the book. When they come to him, they say the president's gone down. He doesn't say it to like the Secretary of State or whatever, but in his mind, he's saying, like, get a new president.
Yeah.
Like, why we're going to go in? Like, he's of Pliskin's mind. Like, who gives a fuck? But then when they've learned about the tape, he says, okay, even though he doesn't really even care to contribute to this, he has to. So that's why he comes up with devises this plan. There's also
the subplot about his son, right?
Well, there's a subplot about his son, but there's also to get to the kind of the police state. What happened was all these prisoners were coming back all fucked up with, like, they were coming back like Snake, from the war.
Yeah.
And so we were like, what are we going to do with them? Like, they were part of the problem. They were part of the crazies. They were part of the mayhem. So, like, let's just put uniforms on them, make them police. So all these guys who didn't know how to do anything other than kill, basically we eliminate the police force and just make one police army. National police force. And that's who all those guys are. They're all, that is made up completely of veterans from these wars.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more about that, and how the police guys are all crazy and how they just want to kill the people. That basically, it talks a lot about, Judge Dredd style, like, they're the police, they're the jury, they're the in more cases than not, they're the executioner. So sounds very
RoboCop-y too.
Yeah, sets up this. That's all the setup for this land. The thing about Hauk's son is when he's going to send Snake into the prison, he says, "There's somebody in there. I want you to, if you see him, can you let me know?" And he's like, "Yeah, what am I going to do? Go door to door?" And he's like, he's got his name, Hauk. He's got the last name tattooed across his fingers. If you see him, he's like, I'm not asking you to bring him with you. Just, let me know if you see him. That guy later becomes, I can't recall if they ever actually say that his son, or it's just that it's implied. But basically the thought is that Hauk's son has gone crazy and he's trapped on the island as well. Do you remember in the scene after the chock full of nuts scene when the crazies are chasing Snake, he goes up the fire escape into the building, he puts the bookcase, and then that hand comes around and Snake blows that hand off?
Yeah.
That's in the book. That hand has the tattoo.
Does Snake see that, or he
sees it after? Like, he sees like the fingers.
Oh God. So it's like Mitchum style. It says it on the fingers itself. Yeah.
So the guy that gets his hand blown off in that scene is, in the book, Hauk's son.
Oh, Jesus. Part of the Chud people coming out of the ground.
So, I mean, that's the kind of like backstory of
this
the whole
is
situation.
a great example of why we love consulting the novelizations, because you'll just learn so much more. And then it begs the question: does like the author himself, does McQuarrie come up with this on his own?
I
does
think
he consult with Carpenter?
Do sometimes have to come up
because
with
what happens if
blanks.
you come up with stuff and the Carpenter's like, I don't like this. Is bullshit. This is stupid.
I don't
you
know
what
if
I mean?
Carpenter
Like,
has a say at that point.
Yeah, I wonder if. Yeah, I guess you're right. I wonder if it is like, since it's contracted work. If even though if he comes up with it, I mean, if I'm the director of a movie and then you're hired to do the novelization and I came up with this character.
Yeah. The other aspect of it is that it's driven home more, and if you listen to the commentaries and stuff of the movie, Carpenter always says that like Houck and Pliskin are the same guy.
Yeah.
That's way more driven home. And even when there's a much more, I told you earlier, there's a much bigger thing where the Secretary of State comes and he explains everything to Houck, which we don't really see in the movie. He says there's this tape, and he's like, what's on the tape? He's like, well, do you know anything about nuclear fusion? He's like, never mind. He says, and Pliskin has the same, they have exactly the same response. Like, you know what? I don't need to know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and we said Houck's played by the great Lee Van Cleef, and I guess when they were casting the movie, whoever they went to casting, they said, who's a face that hasn't been seen for a while was Lee Van Cleef, and Lee Van Cleef
which was awesome casting.
Yeah, I mean, because he was a great 50s, 60s character actor. He shows up, like we said, in the 2 of the 3 spaghetti westerns.
But he made a lot of westerns. I mean,
tons of westerns.
Noon,
he's in a couple Twilight Zone episodes, which actually might be westerns. He's in a
lot of great spaghetti westerns that weren't even made by Leone.
Yeah, that have just become like that fodder of the 70s. And then he was winding down because I think he passes away in the late 80s or so. So this might be, I wouldn't say it's one of his last roles.
I think the beautiful thing about, we talk about Fistful for a Few Dollars More a lot as being our favorite of that trilogy, the Leone trilogy with Eastwood. I think the great thing about that movie is that like Eastwood's not the main character.
No, yeah.
Really Van Cleef's the main character. And that's one of the things I really like about that movie. I mean, it's become like the Eastwood trilogy, but that is really Lee Van Cleef's movie.
And not to get off on that, but then it always gets really confusing because he shows up as Angel Eyes in the third movie, but is he the same character from the second movie, or is he someone different? Because Eastwood, to me at least, is the same character through the 3 movies.
Yeah.
The man with no name. They call him Blondie. They call him, not Tuco, I forget what his name is, but he has a name through each of the movies, but it's not his real name. They just give him like a nickname. But like Jean-Marie Volonté, who's the bad guy in the first one, dies, but then he shows up as the bad guy in the second. He's fucking one of my favorite performances is how psychotic he is in the second movie for a Few Dollars More. But then you're saying Lee Van Cleef shows up as another bounty hunter in the second movie and is tied into the plot, but then he walks off into the sunset at the end of the second movie with Eastwood, and then the third movie shows up and he's kind of the heavy in that movie.
Yeah.
So is he the same guy, but I mean, like now
I don't think they're really intended to be like a real trilogy, but you're right. There's no real way to know.
It could be they're just crossing paths again, and now it's like Boba Fett and Han Solo working together. They work together for one. In the Christmas special, they work together, and then when they leave, it's like, well, we're not friends anymore. But there's no, I guess, to say that they aren't connected. There's never any recognition of they know who they are.
But Van Cleef, point is, Van Cleef, great history, great actor.
He's rocking a left earring in this, which
they talk about in the book as being that that was something that like Navy men would wear an earring to signify that like they survived a sinking ship or something.
Oh, really?
In the book, that's what they say.
That's pretty awesome.
And he says that to him, that was what he escaped from.
Yeah.
When he left, to him it was a wreck. And so he wears that to kind of signify to him is like his pointing out that he survived something.
And then now they cast him, and then I guess they only had like a day or two with him, so they shot all his scenes. And I hear that he had just really injured his knee, but you can't really tell when he's walking.
I don't know if it was just he'd injured his knee horseback riding in like a previous movie, and he was always afraid.
This is Lee Van Cleef,
yeah, Lee Van Cleef, and he was always afraid. The scene that he says was the hardest to shoot was when they're walking down the hall and he's giving all this exposition because he was constantly worried that his knee was going to buckle while they were walking. So he had to, his focus was split between delivering the lines and doing the movie and like not falling down while they were doing it. There's only a couple instances where you see that he kind of limps, and it's like when he gets out of the helicopter and he's like walking away from the helicopter.
Yeah, I noticed.
You see that
he's favoring his left leg.
But other than that, you're right. He doesn't.
He doesn't really give
know.
And I guess they said his wife was on set to monitor to make sure he was all right. But then what happened was there's some shit that when they got the dailies back, some of his close-ups were out of focus.
Yeah,
and then they couldn't get him back, so they just kept it. But I don't
really notice it as being out of focus either.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it really.
But the thing is, technologically, at the time they just created these new lenses.
Yeah, what Dean Cundy brings in the DP for this movie.
Yeah, Dean Cundy, he shot Halloween. I don't think he shot Assault on Precinct 13, but I could be mistaken.
Dun, 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 dun.
He shot The Fog, he shot The Thing, he shot Halloween 2. I think he might have shot Halloween 3.
And he's freaking distinctive as all hell. You can tell it's a Carpenter movie when you see him.
Yeah, it's like the visuals are as much Cundy as Carpenter. At some point they had a falling out, and I don't know the backstory of that, and that's why they stopped working
That's a shame.
together. But, Carpenter likes to shoot in that extra wide
235.
Yeah, like Panavision or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had just invented these lenses that opened to like a 1.8 or something like that. So basically, film stock, they're shot on film. Film stock has a speed, and the lower the number, like the lower the speed, the more light you need. And then you have a lens that opens, the aperture opens to let in light.
Yeah. So the brighter it is, the more you close the lens down, and then the more darker it is, the more you want to open it up to get more light as possible in. So you run into a problem, say, if you're shooting this movie at night. If you open the lens all the way, you still might not be able to get a proper exposure that you want. So that's why they do tricks in the old days, like wet the street down, so there's more light, like they did in the Warriors.
And film stock throughout the 70s and into the 80s was still fairly slow. I don't know what the technology was.
And that's why
it got faster and faster.
You see in a lot of exterior scenes in 70s movies where you can't make out anything except maybe, like tail lights or headlights, or maybe like neon signs, and everything else is just because.
Or they'll shoot day for night, which is like they'll shoot it during the day, stop it down, let in less light, and then in post-production, like add a blue tint and stop it down even more to try to make it look like night.
Yeah, so it's actually daytime, but it looks darker than usual.
But then a lot in the 70s.
You could see like shadows, like you see a lot on television, when they're walking around the back, they're on like the backwoods of California, it's like it's supposed to be nighttime, but it's clearly the sun.
So the only reason this movie could have gotten made is because these new lenses were invented that would open up wide enough to let in light, because they didn't have the time, the money to light like these streets in East St. Louis. So they would wet down the street when they could, and they would just throw up some lights to create like a blue hue. They'd light some fires.
Well, they said that these lenses really afforded them. They can use sources of light that they've never been able to use before. So there's scenes when they're underground where like the source of the light in the scene is a fire.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing, and so they were able to use that as a light source, because prior to that you couldn't be able to get a proper exposure.
Yeah. So, but in relation to the focus, what happens is the less light you use, like the less field of focus or whatever. So they shot the movie with not a lot of light. They used these lenses to open up the aperture so that they could shoot with very low light. But the problem is, focus is very unforgiving.
Yes.
And if you're even just a little bit off, the more light you have, the more you close the lens, the aperture, like the more things are just in focus. So that's one of the reasons these lenses were tricky. And so apparently in that scene between Lee Van Cleef and Kurt Russell, there was some out of focus close-ups with Lee Van Cleef that Carpenter says he was stuck using. But I agree, I don't notice it so much.
You do notice the focus issues where, another thing that was invented that Cundy just came out was the Panaglide Steadicam. So a lot of the stuff they shot like on steady. There's a scene when you see, like, say, them running up to the end of the alley, and then Borgnine's cab comes up and he comes out. You can tell the focal issues because they hit the mark, and right when they hit the mark, say Borgnine will deliver his line, you can see he comes in focus. But also the scenes where they're underground and they're using the Steadicam and Kurt Russell's using the gun to point his way, you could see the barrel of the gun's out of focus. Sometimes there's another scene where he's like, I think when he wakes up, and you get the arrow through the thigh, and he's looking around like the edge of his pants are out of focus, and it's like, wow, like what kind of lens are they using that his legs out of focus, but he's in focus.
Well,
so
also a lot of that has to do also with that like Panavision or whatever, like that extra wide, probably some kind of anamorphic thing.
Along with these lenses, they use this Panaglide Steadicam, which
he used in
shots.
Halloween. Kind of became famous because of Halloween and a movie that nobody likes, but Exorcist 2, The Heretic, also uses a Panaglide in a very effective way, actually. But Steadicam, Panaglides, two different companies making similar technology. It was still new. I mean, Rocky used it. That was one of the really early uses was in Rocky when he's running through the city, runs up the stairs.
I forget the guy's name who invented it because a friend of mine he's now a Steadicam operator who's really good. He does primetime shows. He's met the guy and he's hung out with him.
Shining is another.
The Shining, really, people usually throw that as an example, like of a bar,
like a significant early use. But this is like a year after The Shining. Shining's like 80.
And then you get a lot of like that De Palma one take with Steadicam, and you look at like an example in Goodfellas of them. That one take they go through the kitchen to get to the. So you get a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's 10 years later. Yeah, but you get a lot of you afford yourself longer takes or more. Like almost plays. You can do a lot more with the Steadicam movement and stuff.
This movie, to me, is like such a great example of making use of limited resources.
Totally. And then, he brings in, again, Tom Atkins, who rounds out the cast of the police because Tom Atkins had worked on him. He'd worked just with him in The Fog.
Yeah. And like I said, Cyphers, who plays like the Secretary of State, only has a few scenes, doesn't say a whole lot. Like I said, he's the sheriff in Halloween.
Yeah.
He's in The Fog.
And also, I recognize the lab technician who puts the stuff into Snake's neck. He looks like is he a technician from like Halloween 2 or something?
He might be. I also recognize the black guy who's like David 14. There's a jet coming in. We're trying to hail him. He really looks familiar to me, but I can't pinpoint what I know. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a Carpenter movie.
Yeah,
but he's a familiar face to me as well. And like I said, the terrorist activist person that takes over Air Force One, she plays the nurse, Donald Pleasance's like kind of partner in Halloween's 1 and 2.
Oh, it's when he's driving the station wagon?
Yeah, when they pull up. And then in Halloween 2, she's the one that's like walking around. They have Sam Hain. When they go to the school, she plays a bigger part. She ended up marrying somebody. When you know something, but you don't know the whole thing.
Yeah, it's now the story of my life.
Oh, she ended up marrying the director of Halloween 2, I think, Rick Rosenthal.
Oh, really?
I don't know if they're still married, but I know they ended up getting married.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that they're still married. So we get into the prison, and then we see that character he meets at the Chock full of nuts, which in the book I guess her name is Maureen, but she is never billed in the movie.
Yeah,
and that's Kurt Russell's first wife at the time, and they
just had a baby.
Boston, I think was the kid's name.
Oh yeah, maybe
Boston Russell, and
her name is Susan Hubley.
Yeah. And
Harry Dean Stanton comes up next. Great cast, great like ensemble.
Yeah, Harry Dean's amazing too. In that playing that role, and then the more of that backstory with that, Nick Castle interjecting that humor with Harold. Don't call me Harold. Like that. Yeah. And Adrienne Barbeau at the time, she was married to Carpenter, looking hot as balls as always, and she shows up in there.
When they got divorced, because they were kind of like on their honeymoon when they made The Fog. I love Adrienne Barbeau. But there is this weird thing where she like ages like significantly in a short amount of time.
Yeah,
because she's like hot as balls in fucking The Fog.
Yeah, and even in the 70s, like when she's in Maude, like I forget she's in that. She had like a career in television.
Yeah.
And then she went to that TV movie, Someone to Watch Over Me, the Carpenter TV movie, which is really good. That's after Halloween, but before Elvis.
Yeah,
and then maybe they met on that. I don't know. And then,
but if you look at her from The Fog to like Swamp Thing, which is only like 3 or 4 years, it's like she looks like she's aged like 10 years in a matter of no time.
Maybe she has married to him. Maybe who knows? Maybe
all that cigarette smoke and
just doing it to him. Oh Jesus Christ! Just will you put the cigarette? Oh, you open a window.
She still looks great in the Swamp Thing. I'm not saying it's just like the same thing happened with Connery. Like if you look at the way Connery looked in Goldfinger. Dr. No and Goldfinger to even Thunderball. Which is just like the third movie. There's like a significant, like he looks like he got a lot older in just like a year or two.
Yeah.
Something they hit like there's like a benchmark.
I mean, you see that a lot of times with like, I remember Leslie Nielsen.
And by the way, Adrienne Barbeau, this is like what, 30 years later, 40 years later, she still looks good.
Oh, of course. Yes.
I'm just saying it. So it's not like
she was back to television recently. She had a TV show.
I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying there's like, just if you look between those two movies, I don't know if it's the way they're lit. Yeah. She also has like that fro thing going, like that.
Yeah, that perm,
that perm thing going on in Swamp Thing, and in this movie too.
But certain people they don't seem like. I remember Leslie Nielsen for me never seemed to age, and then prior to him passing away, it just like he turned a corner and he was older all of a sudden. It's like Jesus. So like a lot of people who. Like a Sean Connery, who like since like the Untouchables until like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen didn't to me age like a day. Yeah. It's like Ed Harris, like he's keeping that picture in a vault. You know what I mean? And you don't know all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden he's old. You're like, oh my gosh. And then you have Borgnine shows up too as Cabby. Yeah. Who I guess Nick Castle said he came up with the idea of Cabby.
I think Nick Castle came up with the idea of Cabby, a guy who was a New York cab driver. He's been driving this cab since before it was a prison. Yeah,
and he's still doing it now.
I don't know if he talks about it in the movie, or if it's in the book. But he tells Pliskin basically that he's like, I've been driving the same exact cab. Basically, what he did was when they left New York, when people were getting out of New York, he like hid it. So he like parked it somewhere and hid it. And then when he got put back in New York, he just went back to it, and it was still there.
Yeah. I'm a big Borgnine fan. I read his biography.
We talk about Borgnine and the Black Hole.
Black Hole, yeah. And he talks about in his biography that he got a call from Carpenter and said, I got a part for you. Will you come meet me for lunch? And they had lunch together, and he gave him the script, and he read the script, and Borgnine loved it, and he goes, and Carpenter goes, I have a role for you in mind in this. And then he goes, well, the only one I'd really be interested in is playing is the Lee Van Cleef character. And they're like, no, we've already cast that. And he's like, well, I don't know who you'd want me. And he's like, well, I want you to play Cabby. And he's like, why would you want me to play Cabby? It's like, just, would you take it? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll work with it. It'll be great. So he does it. He loves it. And he has this, he says he kind of has this innocence about the role, the character, that that's how he kind of attacks it, I guess in the movie they kind of say he's kind of like he's like not a storyteller, but he's a person who like links everyone together.
Yeah, I know everybody.
Yeah. So Borgnine says he doesn't realize really until they finish the movie, and he goes through a screening when they're screening it, and he says when he's in this watching it with either the test audience or the first screening, he says the part when Cabby dies, everybody collectively in the audience goes, oh. So he says, he realized that like people, like he's one of the only people care for in the movie.
Yeah, well, he's the only one that seems likable.
Yeah, he's not really. I mean, aside from like him taking off when the Duke shows up.
Yeah.
He's not. He doesn't really. Bust anybody's chops or
he seems like a good guy.
And it's hilarious, like when I love his. I mean, I do that all the time when he makes his first appearance. That dance, he's like that. Like I love that. And then like I said, that's a big one of my funniest throwaway lines is like, wait till I tell Eddie. Like the thing with Snake Plissken when he's with Harry Dean Stanton, he's like, remember Fresno Bob?
Yeah.
Who's Fresno Bob? I want to know.
So there's a little bit of backstory, just a tiny bit in the book. They were robbing something, and Brain Harold was leaving. Harry Dean Stanton's character was the getaway car, and he and Fresno Bob got back, and Brain had left. Harry Dean Stanton's character had left him stranded. Snake, they talk about how Snake's named Snake because he can slither out of tough situations. That's how he got the name Snake. So, and they often refer to him in the book as the Snake. Like the Snake managed to slither away, but Fresno Bob didn't. And when and they call the police force Black Bellies. When the Black Bellies arrive, they skinned Fresno Bob alive.
Oh my god!
Because the police, was telling you this, the police are crazy too. Because they come back from the war from all this gas, this chemical warfare. So for the majority of the police force is all crazy. So that's what happened to Fresno Bob, is he got skinned alive.
That's terrible. Who else we have in the cast? We have the great Isaac Hayes shows up as the Duke. Isaac Hayes
shows up as the Duke.
A number one.
He's the Duke, A number one. Isaac Hayes talks about how his favorite thing about making the movie was Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah.
And how he would love to sit during lunch and stuff, sit around and Ernest Borgnine would tell everybody stories about Hollywood and his career, and loved talking to Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah,
and he loved Donald Pleasance too, who plays the president.
Yeah, because he says that there was when he'd feed him lines off camera, and he'd be so funny, he'd be laughing about stuff like that.
Yeah. Like Donald Pleasance ended up loving playing this character. I think a lot of people kind of overlook one of the great things about this movie is that it's kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, there is a lot of comedy. We talk about Nick Castle bringing that element, but Pleasance loved playing he saw the humor in the president character, and he loved playing it. I think we talk about maybe in Halloween 2, some other Pleasance movie we did. I think we mentioned it where Pleasance was a POW.
Yeah, Pleasance. He went to be an actor in '39, and then when the war was declared, he wanted to be like a conscientious objector. But then when they started the Blitzkrieg, started bombing London, he signed up and he went into the Royal Air Force, and he was an aircraft wireless operator on the 166 Squadron of bombers. And he was in a Lancaster NE-112 over France, and he got shot down in a bomber. And then he became a POW at Stalag Luft 1, it was called. And he was in there with a lot of other POWs, French, American, and British, which is ironic because he goes on to be in The Great Escape, which is about a POW camp. And he says that's what you're alluding to, is he took some of his dealings with the German Nazi soldiers into the performance here of him being a prisoner of war with the president,
and Pleasance being British.
Yeah, so it's weird because they had a backstory to explain away.
Well, Pleasance created a backstory. Yeah, for him to play.
But then when you listen to it, I was expecting to hear a British accent, but sometimes he doesn't have a British accent. So I didn't know if he decided to scruff it and just try to do an American accent, or if it comes out that he's, what I mean?
Pleasance created some kind of backstory where basically
Reagan and Margaret Thatcher have a love child.
It was something happened, and in a nutshell, basically the United States during these wars becomes a colony of Britain again.
Yeah.
And that's why he's kind of eligible to be president.
Yeah, I heard something like they thought of an idea where, or maybe Carpenter approached Pleasance where it's like Ronald Reagan and Thatcher become close, and he's kind of he's what do you call that? He becomes a sir or a duke. I forget what you call that. A lord. And then they have a child, and the child ends up being, the Donald Pleasance character, and that's why he's able to have...
Well, I mean, just time-wise, that wouldn't...
that wouldn't work at all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I don't know if maybe they mean in some sort of weird future. I don't know what, and he's great in this, and I was funny because as a child, I always got him confused with Eddie Albert's role in Dreamscape. Mm-hmm. He plays the president. So I used to always get him confused if it was Eddie Albert who's the president in this movie or Donald Pleasance or vice versa. Because Eddie Albert plays an awesome role as the president in Dreamscape, because that's what that plot's about,
Pleasance, great. Carpenter staple, obviously played Dr. Loomis in Halloween movies.
Yeah. And you said he had to do a lot of convincing Carpenter to get Pleasance to play this. Because Pleasance first didn't really want it.
Yeah, he didn't really get why he wanted him to play it. But ultimately, and also there's I think the British thing probably was like...
How do I get around? Don't worry about it.
But ultimately, Carpenter did talk Pleasance into doing it, and Pleasance ended up really liking the character. Kind of saw a chance to be kind of funny in some ways.
Yeah, make fun of like the capitalist kind of... Because at the end, you get
it's that. It's also like when Harry Dean Stanton and Jerome Barbeau go in and they talk to Romero, Duke wants us to come in. And they go in and he's got like the blonde wig on. Which just never really...
explain what's going on there.
It's just, there's a lot of funny things. And the character of Romero, Frank Doubleday, when in the train station and Pliskin saves... It's the rescue of Pleasance, and then they kind of get double crossed by Brain. And the Brain and Maggie, who's played by Adrian Barbeau, they come out, and I think the Duke is with them. But then Frank Doubleday, who plays Romero, he's like holding on to part of the train. He just kind of like swings in with like his hand over his eyes, like he's trying to look at this
out,
and he just kind of like freezes there. Such an odd performance.
He does. Frank Doubleday in this movie does such amazing stuff that I'm surprised Carpenter let him get away with it. It was probably because they'd worked together, so he had a level of comfortability. But like every scene, he steals it by just doing something that's minimal but like, you know, over the top, but it works.
Well, even in that
like the opening scene, where he goes, awesome. Later on, when like you're saying right there, he swings in, and then like Isaac Hayes says to wait here, and they start walking away. Doubleday never makes eye contact or turns his head, but he points at him like to wait.
Yeah,
so it's like he does all these things, and it's kind of like a letdown for me that he dies in such a way, because I want to see more of his character.
Yeah, he also that first scene with Lee Van Cleef at the beginning of the movie where he's telling him like you're gonna you got 30 seconds to leave. He dies. Like before he starts, he's standing there in front of Lee Van Cleef, and then he looks down, like an actor, like okay, like I got to get into character almost. And then he looks down for a second, for like a whole beat, and then he just like looks up and starts talking. It's like he's like either thinking what to say or just like getting into character.
And he's got that laugh too, which is kind of eerie. Which, you know, like again, it kind of shows up with the black guy in RoboCop has like a kind of maniacal.
Well,
laugh.
he's the biggest example of like an actual character in the movie being quote unquote like one of the crazies.
And it's such a great, like, you know, it's one of those things where you remember. It's almost like David Patrick Kelly in The Warriors. You remember him for being so good.
Yeah,
it's such a small role, where I think David Patrick Kelly's role as Luther's a little more sizable in The Warriors, but Doubleday in this is just so. Is he still alive?
I hope so. I don't know.
Because you don't know a lot of these.
But just like there's just certain performances that I don't even know if good's the word, but like the decisions are so unique that they're just like completely.
And it's also I think it's a trust between the director and the actor, because if the director doesn't like what he's doing, he can tell him stop.
Yeah,
and Carpenter's completely
not a guy
stealing
that
scenes.
would let somebody get away with stuff.
Yeah,
Carpenter definitely seems like the kind of guy that if he didn't like something, Frank Doubleday would have known about it.
Yeah. So and then they hire, when they end up arresting or they capture Snake, they end up getting this real wrestler to fight him. Ox Baker was this guy's name.
And Slag.
Yeah, and so because they had the idea of what you shot. They said they shot in the St. Louis train station, that they wanted to have they wanted to put like Snake through the rigors and see what he can handle and stuff. So the idea was to have like this big fight in Madison Square Garden. So they found a train station to double it, and they put the biggest guy they could find, cast him in this.
Yeah, it was a real professional wrestler.
And if you look up this guy Ox Baker, that was like his shtick, was the eyebrows and that big, I don't know what you call those, like freaking chops that are like whatever they are, and that was his shtick. And he's crazy looking, and he was a big villain for like a couple decades on the wrestling scene.
In the actual movie,
he passed away in 2014.
In the actual movie, the scene's not very long.
No.
In the book, it goes on for a really long time. And then there's like parallel action. It cuts away to, I think, like Maggie and Brain.
Oh, trying to get the president.
And then comes back to the fight.
Yeah.
It's a very long sequence. And I love when he's walking into like the quote unquote arena. He's like, Snake, you know, they describe that it smells, that the place smells. And it said it reeks of sweat and belly gas.
So people are just carpet bombing wherever they're walking around. Let's see. And then there's a interview that somebody did with Kurt Russell recently, where he was in Cape Town for a film festival. So maybe he was promoting
Hateful Eight, or that other Western he was in recently around the same time.
Which I still haven't seen yet. That just reminded me, for Christ's sakes.
The other one I hear is really good.
Bone Tomahawk you're talking about.
The other one I hear is really good is that one Ty West just made with, I think, Ethan Hawke and John Travolta.
Oh, I don't know that one. I'll have to look it up.
It's somewhat recent.
Western.
Yeah, but I like Ty West, so.
Yeah.
And Jeff Grace, who's interviewed in my book, did the music for it, and I hear the soundtrack's really great too.
Check that out. Good plug right there.
I wish I knew the name of it.
We don't know the name, but we'll leave you to decide. That's the one puzzle piece I won't tell you. We'll give you all the clues except that. But the guy's interviewing Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell talks about where he said like he was on this exercise routine, and he says he was, him and Isaac Hayes are hanging out, and Isaac Hayes was always like, at night was saying like, when you wake up in the morning, call me, we'll go work out together. So he's like, all right. So he'd get up in the morning, and he'd ring Isaac Hayes' room, and he'd ring, and finally he'd get like, hello. And he's like, hey, you want me to call you back in 5 minutes? No, man. So then they'd go and exercise together, but he said it was a great work.
He said it was the deepest voice ever, like when he would answer the phone. The whole night of shooting, because most of this movie almost all of this movie takes place at night. So they would shoot from sundown to sun up. Carpenter talks about when they shot in St. Louis, like he didn't see the sunlight. He didn't see the day, the sun for weeks because he would basically just sleep the entire day away or be like shuttled off to, go watch dailies in some dark room if it was day.
So, yeah, and he ends up having a great role in this because he was acting a bit in the 70s doing, like, exploitation movies.
Yeah, but he didn't act in a whole lot. And
no, he was like Truck Turner. I don't know what year Truck Turner is.
He's really good in this.
Yeah.
He makes you... one of my favorite shots in the movie is when
he steps in the frame?
There's that, and there's also, like, at the end when they're when like, he's chasing them across the bridge.
Oh, that's just crazy. Yeah.
He's got
this eye twitch that he does a lot in the movie.
He has, like, this eye twitch that he created for the character, and Carpenter says, he wanted to do it, and so I let him do it.
And it's cool because if you do research into this, that people talk about the Cadillac, I think it's like a Fleetwood, that car, and then they reference the Ford LTD station wagon Squire that had the bars around it that they commandeered to try to get away. Yeah. Those two cars, like the Cadillac with the chandeliers on the end, have become like the footstones for this renaissance of, remember like the souping up your ride kind of that subculture of completely decking your car out. Those two were cited as like the station wagon and the Cadillac are like the grandfathers of, I don't know who owns those cars now because especially the Cadillac when it's driving, then it's like when he gets out of the car,
the hydraulics,
and all that kind of they cite those as like when you're souping up your cars that they're like They trace it back to Escape from New York for whatever reason. Because I don't know, prior to that, I mean, aside from like you get into like Mad Max, but I don't know what other movies you have where like cars are souped up for like post-apocalyptic stuff, as opposed to like you change a car to be futuristic like the Batmobile, say.
I don't remember where you talked about. There's a great thing where I heard George Miller, I think in relation to specifically Road Warrior. I don't know if we talked about it ever. I can't imagine where it got mentioned. But he talks about how the reason why... the cars were so souped up was one for intimidation. If you live in that kind of world, you want something that's kind of intimidating. But his thought process was that even in a world where it's a post-apocalyptic and you have nothing, that doesn't kill the creative, artistic spirit of somebody. So they would, if the only thing you really owned was this car, and you would want it to be an expression of you, so his thought process was they would try to make the cars kind of an artistic expression, because just because you have nothing doesn't mean that part of humanity dies.
It's weird.
And I was like, I never thought of it that way, but when he explained it, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's like when you get to Fury Road, it's like those cars are such a departure from like Road Warrior and Mad Max. It's like it's like a bad dream, a nightmare because those cars are just so crazy. And Fury Road, it's almost like their dream because they're so conceptually done where there's like 4 Cadillac bodies on top together stacked or whatever. They're just so out there. It's just like it's like it's like that idea on like freaking speed. So you're talking about that end scene too, when Isaac is crossing the bridge. I'd heard that J.J. Abrams has a connection to this movie because supposedly his father worked in the industry behind the scenes, and when there was a screening, J.J. Abrams supposedly saw a screening of this movie, and he was the one in urban legend to ask Carpenter or tell his dad to tell Carpenter that it was never clear Adrian Barbeau getting killed. To me,
I never heard that. I mean, I heard that's why they shot.
To me, it's like what we're about to say is I've heard that for years, but when we watch the movie, clearly she gets killed. She gets freaking T-boned.
I know, but the way it's framed, I can see people not see her get hit.
Oh, because you see her shooting, it's like bang, and she gets killed. But then what happens is that they realized when they left the location, they didn't have a shot of her laying dead. So
yeah, we never actually saw her dead. We saw her get hit by the car, but we never saw her dead. So apparently, audience and according to this story, J.J. Abrams,
J.J. Abrams told his father, which is like okay.
So they went. Of course, they weren't there anymore. So they ended up shooting this pickup shot in Adrian Barbeau and John Carpenter's garage.
Yeah, they just put her under the hood of a car,
threw some blood on her over on like the cement of their garage floor,
and they got that shot of her just laying there dead. And she's and it's really touching that at the end when Harry Dean Stanton dies, that she's so upset that Brain gets killed. He gets he steps on a mine.
There's a lot more in the book that Snake is infatuated with Maggie. I mean, it's a little
you get a couple looks from the two of them. Yeah,
but it was more about like the way they describe her, and you totally get that. The thing with Snake and the girl in the Chuck Full of Nuts, it's like he didn't want to kiss her because like Snake doesn't care about that. Like we said, Snake doesn't care about anything, even sex, kind of.
Yeah.
But the only person that he actually has kind of affection for ends up being Maggie. He ends up developing a little bit of.
Well, you get that near the end. He's like, "Come on, let's go," but then he doesn't question when she doesn't really. Her decision's made when she just puts her hand out for the gun. He knows, so it's like he's all about the business. He realizes her mind, so there's no point of even. It goes into his philosophy.
Yeah. But because of book, you have to, you get. More of characterization and like that,
So that's even
you get
sadder
to hear
then.
what they're thinking.
That's even more of it's like a little swan song of that the love that ends up getting away. Now the line in the movie that I use periodically in my life to a couple people were like, I thought you were dead. They allude to there was a 1971 John Wayne movie called Big Jake, and in it they say that to Big Jake, I thought you were dead through the movie. So they say that might be where, since Carpenter's a big John Wayne fan, he got that. But I think that's hilarious every time. And then they say also that every person who says that the Pliskin ends up dying. I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but that's the running gag in the movie. Even when Isaac Hayes knocks him out, I heard you were dead.
Well, it's a great device because
it's like rep.
Yeah, it's like he's legend. Like everybody knows who Snake
even inside
Plissken
the prison.
It gives backstory
that you don't need to fill in.
Yeah, it lets us know that even more about Snake than anything. Like the one line about you flew the glider over Leningrad.
That says so much. Yeah, exactly.
It's such a succinct line, but it says so much.
What a whole
the
page
fact
of
that everybody's
exposition.
like, Snake Plissken, I thought you were dead. lets
I wonder,
the audience know that everybody knows who he is. He's famous. He's
from the
legend.
novelization. You think that means because of the Gulf Fire Leningrad thing? They think he's dead.
I don't know.
Or I wonder why,
or any other heists that he's done since then.
So so when he comes out of when he wakes up with his eye messed up and Taylor sees him, they do a series of heists, not just one. He starts becoming a bank robber, or they don't just.
They don't get into like how many, but we know that we know that bank robbery at the beginning of the movie they got cut out. With Taylor, and we know that there was some kind of heist that he pulled off with the brain.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You have Fresno Bob.
For Fresno Bob.
Fresno Bob. I want to meet Eddie, and I want to know what happened to Fresno Bob.
So we know that there's at least two.
That's true. Okay. How about the score? Great minimalistic, meta. It's like we keep throwing that word meta around, but it's like...
Yeah, this is the first time Carpenter works with Alan Howarth.
Yeah.
Alan Howarth worked with the editor of this movie, the picture editor, Todd Ramsey, either on Star Trek The Motion Picture or Battle Beyond the Stars. I can't remember if Battle Beyond the Stars was before Escape from New York.
And we talk about Howarth a lot in Season of the Witch, Halloween 3.
Yeah, and I interviewed Howarth really in depth in my book Scored to Death. So Alan was in sound effects. Alan did the sound effects for the Enterprise for the first 6 movies. Special sound effects is what they call them back then. Sound effects that you couldn't get in Foley. Something that you can't record.
Yeah.
You have to create like the sound of the warp drive, the sound of the transporter. So that's what he did because he was into synths and stuff.
Did he end up doing the Next Generations? Did he do the score for that?
I don't think he did those.
Okay, no, I'm thinking of Jay Chataway.
Jay Chataway did a lot of music for all the Next Generation and on series, who did the music for Maniac. But so Carpenter had, I don't know if it's a falling out, but something happened, and the guy he was working with on Halloween in the Fog and Assault at Precinct 13, who was basically a technician, couldn't do Escape from New York, or he wanted to work with somebody else. Todd Ramsey, the editor, was like, you know what, you should meet this guy Alan. He's all into synths. He's a musician. And so Carpenter came over to his house in Glendale. They shot the shit. Alan played some stuff for him, showed us some equipment, and Carpenter's like, all right, let's do it.
That's it. That was his audition.
So that was it. And so...
Was that, not to get down take a left turn because we're getting up in the cast, but was that the person's house? Whose house did you go over and you got to look at equipment? We talked about that in the side cast of your trip to California.
Oh, that was Nathan Barr, who's a much younger guy.
Okay. He invented that one
like a cello, this weird cello and stuff. He did the music for like Hostel, and he did all the music for
The Insidious.
He didn't do Insidious. That was Joseph. But anyway, so
Joseph Bashara.
Yeah, Joseph Bashara, and
it all jumbles together.
Yeah,
everything.
It's all the same shit.
Yeah.
So basically, how it worked was Carpenter. They shot the movie. Carpenter does his own music. Alan says they worked basically from the beginning to end. So the first thing they actually scored was the bank robbery scene.
Which is a little different because it's a little more upbeat because they want to keep that pace of a robbery. So if you listen to that score, it has a lot of stuff that goes and then unused in the regular theatrical cut.
And according to Alan, the way they worked, especially in the beginning, was it's Carpenter's score. Carpenter would come in and they would improvise over picture. And this is the first time Carpenter actually plays to picture, because before that he was like, I need 3 minutes of this, 3 minutes of that. It wasn't like they were working at a big studio where there was a sound stage with a projection. But Alan says, hey, like it's the early 80s. What if you just get a video dub of the movie and we can score to the video dub? So that's the first time. And Alan, I think, says that Carpenter called that like the electronic coloring book or something. And that notion
the electronic coloring book.
I think that's what he calls it. You have to check my book, Score to Death, to find out if I'm right.
Make me laugh. I'll cough up a lung.
And
excuse me.
So Carpenter would do the first pass, come up with a lot of the melodies, very improvisational the way Carpenter works. He would watch and play, and if he liked it, he'd keep it. If not, it wasn't like some of these other guys who have music always going on. He would watch, play, and then Alan's job was, one, he was the sound technician. Like, he ran all the synths. Back then, you had to tune them and stuff to get certain sounds. And then he would record everything, and then Alan would sometimes go in and add other layers of synth over what Carpenter had done. And so they had a working relationship from Fog all the way till maybe They Live or Prince of Darkness, whichever movie came last. So they made like 7 movies together or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Carpenter, into the 90s, started to work with other people. But Alan's gone on to score other things and still works a lot in sound design. He did sound design for a lot of things. Hunt for Red October. you know, he worked on Poltergeist and sound in post-production sound. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Army of Darkness. He was the sound supervisor. So Alan has a fascinating career, but he's best known for his work with Carpenter, and it all started with this movie.
Well, it's very memorable, the score. It's very much like, you have like Assault on Precinct 13 has its main theme, and so does Halloween, and then The Thing does, and this one does too.
It's very, and especially for Carpenter, it's very unique, because it's not a horror movie. There's something, there is something heroic about it, even though it's not like the big orchestral,
it's
hero
minimal,
scores or anything. It's very minimal, but it's still like, the
it's there. It's awesome.
And Carpenter, during his tour, would open the show with the theme from Escape from New York.
That's awesome, like on a Hammond B3 organ or something like
that. Special effects wise, big deal. The people that did the visual effects was New World Pictures, who was Corman's company. Corman's company was like an all-in-one studio. So he had an effects team. And because they worked with Corman, they knew how to work on a low budget.
And the Carpenter had an issue where he didn't have a lot of money, so he's like, I need to have all these effects like New York City stuff.
Yeah, so the brothers, Dennis and Robert Skotach, I think they were running the thing at the time. All the miniature stuff, which I think still works great.
It's amazing that all that stuff is miniature, like the
city, because they didn't shoot in New York City, because you couldn't get New York City to shut all the lights off, for a shot. So they had to do it all in miniature. So the glider going in and all that stuff.
Well, I didn't know that shot of when Pliskin's in the glider and he's looking through his monitor bank, and it's supposed to be 3D animation, like that we can do easily. It didn't exist
anymore.
Yeah. You didn't have it yet.
Just at that point. So
all the stuff you'd be able to do today with computerized, 3D models, they actually made models and they just painted it, but put like clay tape, and they like used the black light.
They basically painted the scape of New York, their miniature, black, and then they edged it out with like reflective tape, shined a black light on it so that
it looks like...
So you get those lines. So you get like that primitive...
So it's actually a practical set that they're putting the camera through, that it makes it look like it's a computer. And then at the beginning, the only stuff that they say they shot in New York City is the Liberty Island stuff that they say they're...
Which is only for about 2 seconds of the movie.
And they say they're the first, and maybe not the only, but they're the first company to be able to shoot on Liberty Island at night.
Yeah.
And because
so also was some kind of like bomb attempt or something.
Yeah, a couple weeks earlier. And so you get the pan down of the Statue of Liberty, and they do that cool shot where Tom Atkins walks into the truck and comes out the other side, and they're like,
and then when they come out the other side, it's another...
They're in L.A. They're in L.A. at the dam where Grease had the Grease lightning sting, and the Terminator goes after the T-1000, after John Connor.
But the effects, great. I love the miniatures. The only thing that's a little hokey is when the glider falls off.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of.
But aside from that, like the glider landing on the
and even the
towers.
Skotach brothers who were running, even they said like we really wanted to do more. There just wasn't
enough. Yeah,
there wasn't enough.
But I mean, for effective, what they did was the aside from the miniature work too, they actually used like matte painting, and they used a piece of glass. So like the scene when, like you're saying, when they're dropping food in Central Park, that. All that back stuff is actually the old school where you put a piece of glass up.
Well, what happened with that scene? I mean, you see,
and they paint it.
You see a lot of that painting, and James Cameron was actually the guy that did all those matte paintings. But in that particular scene,
because he was working,
you actually don't see it, because what happened was James Cameron did a whole New York skyline in the park, and then they realized that the helicopter was going to land behind the glass. So they ended up, unfortunately, not being able to. You see shots of it, like screen grabs of it, in the park, and you see like
there's a shot when you see the helicopters first coming in. You could see like the dilapidated, because they must have put the through the glass right where the helicopters. But once they get to a certain point, they'll start to land. It'll ruin the effect because it'll go right in front of or behind the glass.
Unfortunately, there was a big piece of glass painting that Cameron spent however much time on that they couldn't use. But you see a lot of his work throughout the
and there's stills of him working on set of like doing the glider stuff on the Twin Towers and stuff, because he was working for Corman at the time, because he was just doing the Piranha movies, and it was right before he moved away into Terminator. So that's pretty interesting to see him working on this film. And then so they shot the movie from August to November 1980. It came out July the 10th, 81. $7 million or $5 million budget, ends up grossing $25,244,700, which is pretty good.
That's $1981.
$1981. It's funny, overseas they changed snake to hyena in Italy, and they also changed snake to cobra in Korea. So those are his names. And Cobra.
Well, he's got a cobra tattoo.
Yeah, so maybe that's why they're like So and it ends up I think setting a mark, and it starts that trend of 80s movies that ends up turning out being, you get a lot of that dark, certainly Blade Runner comes out, but that's based off of Philip K. Dick, but you have a whole wave of those post-apocalyptic.
Oh, sure. But there was a board game.
Yeah.
Which I hear is pretty awful. I can't find one. I want to get one.
Yeah, you're looking for it.
I hear it's bad. The novelization was great. Term of Legacy.
Well, you said it's not very hard to find if people want to go.
The novelization, if you want it, you can find it on Amazon,
and
you can get it for like $8.
It's so awesome. We endorse these novelizations. How cool they are.
They made Escape from L.A., a sequel in 1996. Solid Snake in Metal Gear was inspired. A character in the game's Metal Gear.
Yeah, the director
was inspired by Snake Plissken. Like we said, there was an animated movie slated that never happened. Lawsuit with Luc Besson, and also as we love to talk about those crazy Italians and how they, the idea of the ripoff movie or the mockbuster. So there's some great Italian-esque movies, Italian style Escape from New York movies. 1990s Bronx Warriors, or 1990 Bronx Warriors, which was made in 1982. The title is 1990 Bronx Warriors, and then 2019. After the fall of New York.
I wonder where they shot those, if they actually came over to America like Fulci would do, and if they shot some of that like in the burned out South Bronx.
I've actually...
you have that, don't you, the Bronx?
I've actually never seen the Bronx one. I hear that's very much like an homage to both Warriors and Escape from New York. We should maybe think about doing it at some point.
That'd be pretty sweet.
2019, the Fall of New York is... that one is got a special place in my heart. I would not say it's great, but it's if you like to watch those kinds of things. It's
Yeah.
really worthwhile.
And those are probably your recommendations, too, if we recommend for this show.
Well, I would recommend, if we're going to do recommendations, I would say watch Warriors.
Yeah.
And maybe the fall of 2019, the fall of New York.
Yeah. I'd probably maybe say...
Or after the fall of New York.
Say a movie like a RoboCop, because it's just like it's that dark... It adds to the cynicism of the world, where it doesn't... To me, it doesn't seem like Blade Runner so much is in this world, but like a RoboCop where society doesn't care about anything. There's nobody really redeeming in it. I kind of get that feel. I'd love to see more of the world. It'd be cool if the comic book series, or they did that animated series.
Yeah, I have the comic book, the more recent comic book series, and I haven't read it, but it's just like it's Escape from New York.
Yeah. It'd be cool.
I don't think it's just an adaptation of the movie, but it's an Escape from New York comic.
I mean, I could see...
it's more, obviously has more to do with New York.
I could see AMC doing like a show about this, like a prequel of like, New York City falling apart, and then the gas and all that shit leading up to it becoming a prison. That's like
I
the
think
end of
that's
season
kind of
1.
like the idea of that Neil Marshall movie Doomsday, if I recall. It's like some kind of virus happens and they wall in Scotland or something, and there's something some thing, some
I still haven't seen that.
Or something they have to. I don't know. Maybe we'll watch it together sometimes. I haven't seen it since it first came out. Like I said, I was so.
But I remember you liking it.
I was so kind of put off.
But you're put off because it's so much
Bob
like
Hoskins. What's his name? Hoskins?
Yeah, Bob Hoskins.
He's in it. So I mean, there's definitely redeemable things about it. I remember being more put off by the fact that it was just a ripoff of Escape from New York. But I might really like it now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm kind of separated from it a little bit.
Yeah. It's like that Snowpiercer. I hear that's like a post-apocalyptic on a train. It's like, what the hell? I hear it's a good movie. And it's like, how can a post-apocalyptic
Mad
movie on a train?
Max
Mad Max
would be a good
Road Warrior. Yeah,
would be a good.
Maybe that's what's happening in Australia. Right? That the same kind of a world. They've kind of fallen apart. But yeah, definitely. I mean, Sleepover Stars. I'd give this like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5.
I think it'd have to go like
5,
maybe 5 out of 5.
6 out of 5. Because
the only thing it could use is more boobs.
Yeah, and they got it pretty covered
for Sleepover.
Yeah, they got it pretty covered with Adrian there. I mean, it's funny the shots when she's in it. Yeah, it's hilarious. You just look, everyone just watching those things jump and jingle.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, goddamn, Carpenter.
And, you have a shot of like Ernest Borgnine, Harry Dean Stanton, and Carpenter and Kurt Russell on frame, and everyone's just looking at Adrian Barbeau's chest.
I was like, man, if you're gonna envy Carpenter for anything,
he was married to Adrian Barbeau for many years.
I had a kid with Adrian Barbeau.
Lord have mercy.
Who was in his band, Cody.
That's hilarious. So they must have some sort of relationship if they mothered a child together.
You never hear them.
No.
She's always in like Carpenter documentaries that discuss them. It seems to me that they parted on good terms.
Blood is like Linda Hamilton and James Cameron. If the other girl Bigelow and Cameron. I love that Jamie Lee Curtis was so tight into like the Carpenter thing. Well, I didn't know all this stuff was. She has a sizable role in this because even the stuff that's deleted, she has all that voiceover work, and it's like.
I mean, obviously there's Halloween, but she's in The Fog.
Yeah,
she does the voiceover.
This stuff, and I'm sure she's in other stuff.
I wish they would do something together. It would be interesting to get like.
Yeah, a little.
Unfortunately, Pleasance isn't with us anymore, but to get some of those Carpenter-esque,
get like
people together,
do like a creep show again, and have like an anthology.
Sam Neill.
Is Tom Atkins, Kurt Russell,
Peter Jason, who's in like every Carpenter movie after Fritz of Darkness.
Yeah, get all those. That'd be great. All those freaking things. But yeah, I think it's like 4 out of 4, 4 to 5, 5 out of 5. It's great. I mean, the only thing now is just that with age, it's just you start looking for things that are wrong with it, but it's just and it flows too. It's only an hour and a half.
It's dated, but I think it holds up pretty darn well.
Yeah.
The effects hold up. If anything, it's like Isaac Hayes. It's like it's just, it's like there's stuff about it you can't avoid that it's so like late 70s, early 80s. And
they're using tapes, or the American Bandstand is the song at the end. It's like, but it's great because it has that cynical ending, which is amazing. Which I've only seen Escape from LA once, but I remember the Escape from LA ends the same way. They have
it ends with like he's got a device that's going to turn off electricity.
Bring it back to the Stone Age, and he does like fuck it.
Yeah, it's there's that. It's very telling that scene. He goes. He goes to talk to the president. He's like, I just want a moment of your time.
I know, and you can really tell he's judging
that's
it there.
That's a decision.
Yeah, is he going to give the tape up to him, and then he can kind of tell that he's a lot of people died. to get you out
And
of
it's just
there.
like kind of like
Fresno
standard,
Bob died.
the kind of standard answer. I appreciate it. The sacrifice is greatly appreciated.
I'm going to be on TV in 2 minutes.
And so that's when the Snake makes that decision.
Yeah.
Great end scene with him and Hawk.
Oh, yeah, where they're like, you going to kill me now? I'm tired.
Yeah, and he's like,
Maybe later.
Pliskin doesn't look at him. In the book, he says, "Did you see him?" Meaning his son. He's like, "I saw him, and he's doing okay." Like he
lies to him.
Yeah, he tells him that I saw him. He's happier there than he would be anywhere else, or something like that. He basically lies to him.
That's a more of a redeeming, like, admirable quality that goes to, like, Snake's underdone. Because like you said, Snake goes back for Taylor, or even when that girl who played by his first wife, he tries to save her when she's pulled in by the Chud people. You could tell he does have a heart, which is kind of nice.
Deep down.
Yeah, Snake's heart's there.
Yeah.
He's just,
So there's like those lines, and then
he's like the outlaw Josie Wales.
And then Hawk asks him. He says he's okay. He's happier than he would be anywhere else, and you can tell Hawk is kind of like Hawk is. It says something like like you can tell like years of worry, like just like disappear from his face. You could tell like that was like Hawk really needed to hear that. And then Hawk's like, I was hoping we could work together. And then the dialogue from the movie starts back up. It's like, I got a job for you, and
it's called L.A. Now this makes me want to go back and watch Escape from L.A.
Maybe we'll do it next year.
Yeah, see how that. I remember it.
I have a friend of mine, my buddy Eli. He likes Escape from LA is like one of his favorite movies. He likes it even better than this one.
Wow. I remember it having its flaws at the time.
Oh yeah, it's really cheap.
It's severely dated.
It gets
now.
even more tongue in cheek, and somehow you're right. It's like more dated than this one
because they're surfing, and then there's Steve Buscemi shows up, and they have the basketball.
They go even more.
Bruce Campbell's there.
Bruce Campbell's great.
Yeah,
I was only at that one scene.
It's all kind of crazy shit in there. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out again. But if anything, this has been an infomercial for Mike McQuarrie's book. The McQuarrie book.
What is it? Bantam Books, 1981.
Yeah, Escape from L.A. Escape from New York.
Yeah,
so,
it's fun.
Yeah,
love this movie. Glad we did it.
Yeah,
starting off 2017 with a bang.
Yeah, we're kicking in the door, waving the 4-4. So it was really awesome. So check us out. We're on iTunes. We're on all the other places. We're on Facebook, our Facebook page.
Yeah. Check us out on Twitter, guys. Come on.
Yeah, Twitter at
Some of you guys aren't following us on Twitter, and I don't like it.
He's getting mad. It's getting so late in the morning. We're getting delirious. But yeah, check us out on Twitter. We're at Sat Sleepovers. We have our regular page. You can find a lot of extras there. We'll have a lot of stuff for this cast there, like the deleted opening and some other stuff, and maybe some music and some other extras. And then we have the Facebook page. We have our podcasts on the various podcast
iTunes
places
and whatnot. Check out Scored to Death, which is my book. You can follow it on Facebook and Twitter. And this is especially relevant because we get accounts of this score from both Alan Howarth and Carpenter. So you can read a little bit about this score in that book.
Yeah, Blake's got Scored to Death. That's his book. Let's see, I don't really have anything going on at the moment, but you could find me. I'm around, If you're a Megyn Kelly fan, she's got a new book out. I mentioned in that twice, really, so check that out. And we'll see you in 2 weeks because 2017 is coming up. And believe it or not, we have a lot of great movies in store for you because got a lot of 30-year anniversaries. But we have a lot of great stuff coming out, and we're going to have some fun. Gonna have me some fun. Gonna have me some fun. Long, tall Sally. She's real sweet. She makes everything like a guy needs.
Later.